In this session, I want to talk to you about, you have all these tools, skills, strategies, tactics, approaches to turning on your business. How many got, if you stop right now, more than enough to take your business to a whole nother level? Raise your hand and say, I. So as we talked about before, knowing what to do is very different than doing what you know. And when something is new, you don't know it quite as well. So there tends to be even more hesitancy. So part of what we're doing in this compression by you being in this environment is putting you in a position where day and night you're thinking about this stuff and it starts to amalgamate, it starts to connect. Because as your brain gets overloaded, the beauty of that is your conscious mind kind of disappears a little bit and your unconscious starts to take over. And that's the part of your brain that makes your heart beat 100,000 times a day without you having to think about it. So immersion has that power. That's the beauty of what we're doing. And then many of you are going to get this program, you're going to go back through it a step at a time, and you're going to repeat it. You're going to do that spaced repetition by way of video or audio or some combination of it, maybe using net time, no extra time. So listening to it maybe while you're working out, things of that nature. You'll embed it even more. So let's just assume you organize things well, and we're going to make sure tomorrow you leave with a real clear plan. The plan's in front of you. It's all ready to rock and roll. What is the single most powerful constraint as to whether or not your business is going to grow or not? What is it? Me, meaning the business owner, yourself. And if you're not the business owner, the biggest constraint that you have an impact on is yourself. And as you heard yesterday when we talked and looked at HomeX's example, here's a company that's growing leaps and bounds in a multi-billion-dollar business, traveling around the world. The economies are tearing apart in many places, and it's growing. But the constraint that they saw was the vision of the founder, what they were willing to believe is possible. And the great thing about them is, we didn't know. We didn't know it wasn't possible. That's a very helpful thing not to know, just to go out there and do it. How many of you, when you started out in business, didn't know what you couldn't do, and that was quite helpful? Let me see your hand. Say, I. Me too. If I look back at stuff that I did back then, I think, my God, that's unbelievable. I can't believe I would say that or do that or try that. But what's interesting is in the beginning of your business, and when people are brand new at something, they'll try almost. But if you start to succeed, some of you are later in your life cycle. And so as you start to succeed now, you've got something to lose. And now you don't implement at the same level. You've got something to maintain. You've got something to hang on to. And so you have to be cautious about that. But besides your own vision, the limitations of your belief or vision, which hopefully you've been expanded, how many feel like that has been expanded? If you shout up and out here, say, I know it has, I can see it. I've had the conversations with you. Each time you hear someone, you see a different perspective, a different way, and you go, my gosh, there's just so many ways to take my business to the next level. I don't have to wait. I don't have to hope for some, quote, good economy. The worst economy is my deepest friend because it's wiping out all my competitors and giving me an opportunity to take market share or become the leader or take their customers or buy them for a song. Selling has kind of an interesting connotation because in our culture, when we think of salespeople, we think of high integrity individuals who have a huge positive influence on the quality of our lives. Tell me the first words you associate to a salesperson, quick. Scumbag, thank you, very nice scumbag. What else? Manipulator, liar, greasy, deceptive. Guy goes, great guy. Now, how many of you in this room are salespeople? Let me see your hands. If you're an owner of a business, you better be raising your hand. If you are a parent, you better be raising your hand. Because by the way, are kids great salespeople, yes or no? You don't have to teach them how to deal with rejection. They just let it pass on by and keep coming, right? You can't have an ice cream cone, 10 minutes later they're licking on one with a smile on their face, right? No one taught them any scripts. No one taught them anything. What I want you to get is that the single most important skill in life, we hate the word selling, so I'll give you a word that it really is that doesn't have the negative connotation. It's the word that all leaders have. What would that word be? Influence. What changes companies is leaders. The only way to change a company is leadership. If I want to change a company that I own and I want to make a shift in that company, the number one thing I'm going to do is shifting leadership. That might be taking leaders to a different level. That might bring new leaders in. That might be new leaders of new voices with new perspectives. with new skill sets, new directions, but we need to take things to another level. Leaders solve problems and leaders maximize resources. If you're going to solve problems, you can't do it yourself or it would have already been solved. You have to get others to help you to do it. That requires influence. True? If you're going to get people to maximize resources, that requires influence. If you're going to get people to partner with you, provide you resources, capital, suppliers, anything, that requires influence. If you're going to have an impact on your kids or your community or the world, that requires influence. There is no more important skill of leadership than influence. And yet most of us think of it like selling, and as a result, we don't master influence. So I'm not here today to try and get you to become a master of influence in 45 minutes or so. Am I chatting with you here because we have so many of the speakers. This is the area of life I am most focused on. Because I know that if you can't influence, you can't lead. But if you can influence powerfully, intelligently, with integrity, there's no limit to whatever you can envision and what you can make real. And if your influence becomes not just you as the influence, but you're able to influence systems, people, company, culture. If you can turn other people into influencers, now whatever you vision about can be made into a reality. And so as a skill of influence, we got to ask ourselves, how many agree leaders are what change companies? Raise your hand if you agree with that. Say aye. And leaders' number one skill is influence. If you agree, say aye. And then the question becomes, how do you influence? How do you influence consistently with integrity? You can influence many ways. You can do it without integrity. But the good news is we live in a world today where whatever you do, it's transparent to the world because there are no secrets anymore, are there? Try to have a secret today, bless you. You can forget the secret. With the internet, with the culture we have, with the way the world is today, there are no more secrets, and whatever you think is still possible to keep a secret, give it 3 or 4 more years and it'll be impossible. Every phone call you make is recorded. There's no single phone call that goes in and out of North America that they don't have a recording of, and they can search by word, by tone, by tempo. They can even recognize voices now. There is no such thing as privacy. Everything you've ever put on the internet is there forever, and people know it and can search it. The way you write is searchable now. You can not sign your email, you can put it on somebody else's email, and the structure of your language and the way you influence things can be studied at this level. So the good news about that is manipulation as an ongoing tool for success is over. But adding value will never go out of style. Truth will never go out of style. So influencing with integrity is the secret. But what really influences people? Do facts and figures, we give you enough facts and figures out of a core story, is that going to influence people? No. It's the weaving of that story together in a way that produces what shifts people. And that's human emotion. Ultimately, the big game here is emotion. You have to influence emotion. You have to influence the emotion of your people. If you're going to maximize resources, and if we all agree, as we talked about the other day, it's not a lack of resources, it's a lack of what? Resourcefulness. If you're creative enough, if you're playful enough, if you're determined enough, if you're focused enough, you can find a way. If you're giving enough, if you're generous enough, if you're honest enough, if you're courageous enough, you will get people to help you. You will find the way. You will make that thing happen. You'll access the resource. You get someone to coach you, teach you, loan it to you, let you try it, drive it, experience it. So it's the ability to influence emotion because that's what affects our intellect. That's the bottom line. A core story is only there to give you a set of facts to educate someone that will make them emotional enough to make a decision. And what they do is they go through a series of things that you have emotions about. They may say them in a non-emotional way, but the only reason they work is because you know they're going to open the person's emotion. How many agree with me on this? Say aye. So as leaders, we can never forget that humans are emotional creatures, including ourselves. And to influence other people, we have to know what already influences them. And we can't ever forget what truly influences them. It's going to come down to our ability to connect with them at a deep emotional level or get others to do the same. Here's how I'd say it in a really simple term. To influence someone, you have to already be influenced. Right? To move somebody, you better be moved. To touch somebody, you can't touch somebody about your product or service or vision or idea or your company if you're not touched. To persuade others, you have to be persuaded. You can't give somebody else what you don't have. Now, you may have it intellectually, and here's the challenge. When you first meet somebody in your relationship, and you're all excited. What's the level of energy like? 0 to 10. Make the sound of that energy. You meet somebody you're totally excited by. Make the sound, everyone. 6 months, 6 years, 20 years later. It's scary, isn't it? And it's not time, because there are people I've been with them, been together 65 years, and they're still out of their mind for each other. They make the same amount of noise you did in the beginning here. What changes is, very often, when you're around something enough, I don't care what it is, there's a law called the law of familiarity. The law of familiarity says this: if you're around something enough, you take it just a little bit for granted. And it doesn't matter what it is, it's not that you don't care, it's that you get used to it. It's that the variety of it is not quite as high. It's not so new, and with that, sometimes you give it less significance. Even though in your heart you know it's significant, you don't keep the aliveness of it. It becomes something you intellectualize versus something you feel inside your body with a passion. So there are people say, but we love each other. Yeah, well, that's great. You know, hug each other every now and then. You say you love each other. Little kiss like that. Was that how it was in the beginning? No. It isn't time. It's that most people don't understand that this emotion, this intensity, this passion has to be constantly reinforced every single day. And like any muscle, if you don't use it, So then you have the base understanding of why you do what you do, but you've lost the energy that makes it alive. And so if you're going to be touching people, you've got to be touched. So then the question is, how do we influence ourselves? How do we influence other people? We got to get them into their emotions. We got to get ourselves into the emotions that are going to move us to action. And we got to do that ongoing, because otherwise all the stuff you wrote down will die. It'll die in your book. It'll die in your head. There has to be a level of emotion, a level of hunger in you that makes you go follow through. There's got to be a level of energy in you that when you go share it with people, you're able to influence them to follow through. And when they don't do it, enough to get back in there with them again and get them to do it again. This is where the whole game gets won or lost. Do you agree or disagree with me on this? So what we got to look at is, first of all, us. How many of you have days when you wake up and you feel like, I don't want to talk to people today? How many got days like this in your life? Say, I. But again, as I said the other day, if you're the leader, you don't have that choice. If you're the leader, you have to get in a good state. If you're the leader, you have to get yourself in that place. And how many of you have had some gut checks? Let me see again in the last 6 months, 12 months in your business with economy changing like it's never changed before. How many have had those gut checks? Say aye. So what do? We have to become masters of influence, which means we have to be able to master the state of our own organization. To master the state of our own organization, we've got to know how to change that. How fast, my friends? How fast? And where does it have to start? Ourselves, since we're the first constraint. And if we can do it with ourselves and influence, then we can teach everybody else to influence. We've said business is innovation and marketing. You have to influence people to innovate, because they're not going to just do it because they're used to what works and it's easier and they know it. Innovation means massive what? Change. How many people go, give me more massive change in my life with all the other things I'm trying to hang on to? They're not going to do that. You have to influence people to innovate. And marketing is influence. So, what influences us is our states. How do we change our states? Let's start with you and I and with anybody we're going to work with. You've worked with me before, you know the first answer. If you're going to change somebody's state, the fastest way to do it is physical. Trying to change somebody's mind is really hard. Change their body, their mind will go. If you doubt it, give somebody enough alcohol and just see how quickly you can change them. True? Give them enough alcohol, I don't care who they are, they're going to change. What are you changing? Biochemistry, physiology, physical body, and the emotion, the mind will shift. That's why people take drugs. That's why people eat. When they go eat, it's a biochemical change in their body. So, but we can do this through movement. We can do this through change. So if you want to be the leader and you're going to be affected, first thing I'd say to all of you going home, so you don't feel overwhelmed, is you need to develop an ongoing discipline, because we are our rituals. And I mean a physical one. If you want to say, well, why is my life the way it is today? Look at your rituals. Whether you call them rituals or not, you have them. Most of you get up and you have a set of rituals. You go straight to email, or you go straight and work out, or you go have your breakfast, or you hit the snooze alarm at least 3 times. It's your ritual. Who knows what I'm talking about here? And if you want to know what somebody's like, you can see their rituals. You can look at anybody's body in this room, if you had them take their clothes off, and you know some of their rituals or lack thereof. Is it true? If every day you get up and your ritual is you go to Starbucks and order a mocha, whatever those things are that you have, right? And a big muffin and whatever it is, right? And that's what you do every day. It's not hard to figure out what you're going to be like by 10:30 in the morning. You're going to be looking for your next coffee, your next whatever, because you want to stimulate your adrenal glands like crazy, and they're going to drop predictably. And we know what your stress level is going to be like. We know when your energy is going to go and fade. It's predictable because of your rituals. If you eat a certain way, you can predict that person's going to be fat and tired. You eat a different way, you know. If a person eats and they exercise a certain way, you know what their body's going to be like. Who here works out 5 days a week, never misses? It's just your life. Let me see your hands. Look at the number of people here. That's fantastic. Give everybody a hand. That's really fantastic. Who here honestly never works out consistently? Right? Don't clap. Now here's what's interesting. I'm not saying one is right as one is wrong, but will those two different rituals create a different body, yes or no? If we wanted to really make it clear, we'd say everybody works out 5 days a week, stand up, we can look at them, sit down, everybody doesn't work out, stand up, look at them. It'll be pretty obvious. Now, some people's metabolism is different, they get by with different things, but you get the picture, don't you? Your relationships today are the results of your rituals. If the first thing you do every day when you come home is, hi, honey, and then you go and give them a little peck on the cheek, and then you sit down and start typing your emails, or you flip on the news, it's not hard to know what your relationship's going to be like. You guys might love each other, but it's going to be one boring, dead relationship. It's like having a brother or sister. But if your new ritual was, and you just, in the beginning, you made it a ritual. You just made it for fun. You say, every day when I come home, the minute I'm going to do is I'm going to yell my husband or wife's name, or sometimes my wife's a little crazy, so I go, Lucy! I'm home. And then we both go running. Wherever she is in the house, wherever in the house, we go running full speed like lovers that haven't seen each other in 6 months. We do it. Ask my assistant all the time. Now, not every day, but it's our ritual to this process, right? It's just a crazy thing. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the hand, but that's not what I'm telling you to do this. I'm telling you this because I want you to create yours. Because when you do that and you're playful and crazy, and you do that on a regular basis, like you can't wait to see each other. And the biggest ritual that we have besides physical, and by the way, let me just say to you this. When you go home, if you want to transform your business, transform you by creating first, if you don't already have one, a set of physical rituals that you're not going to miss. I don't care if it's 3 days a week, 4 days a week, something that's going to make you physically strong, because in a place where there's going to be a lot of fear, the way you deal with crisis is number one thing you should do is feed your mind. And you're doing that. Get yourself new answers. Immerse yourself in new environments. Get new voices. Have new perspectives. Ask some new questions. Isn't that what we've been doing here? Right? And we're doing it together and bringing all these people together. I basically, to create innovation in your life and marketing, I've assembled here 19 people. You assembled 5 days of your life, and we're just rocking day and night. It's the total immersion of what I taught you in innovation. It's really what it is. But this has got to continue. For it to continue, though, we've also been managing your state to a great extent. Right? Most of you don't go home in 4 or 5 days and start clapping like crazy and screaming and shaking. You don't do that yourself. Right? And so some of you are going to go like, wow, it doesn't feel the same as at the seminar and stuff. You know, I'm back here by myself and my people aren't doing this. But some of you will go home and initiate this. You're going to have your Physiology 5, your 5 minutes of physiology shift, once an hour, once every 90 minutes, or no more than once every 2 hours. You're going to start your morning with everybody, and you're going to bring in and get some little audio clip of something from a movie or something that blasts across, the room. And have everybody stand at attention. You're going to do some crazy stuff if you're smart. Go over Zappos and see what they do. They got the most crazy stuff going on there. All the stuff that I do in seminars, they do every day at their location with their people. And people can't wait to get to work and they're in a certain state. So if I were you, I'd feed my mind, you're doing that. I'd then condition my body. Because your body is going to give you the strength to follow through. And there's nobody in this room who can afford to do that. And I don't care if that's going for a walk. And as you're doing a walk, you're doing what I call my hour of power, or 15 minutes, to thrive, where you're just putting yourself in state, maybe doing incantations. You got to do something that gets the blood moving through you on a consistent basis. And once in a while, it's really pushing you beyond your comfort zone. So when you get beyond your comfort zone in your mental side, there's already a reservoir there. Who knows what I'm talking about here? Say I. So, feed your mind. Feed your mind with the information. Feed your mind with examples and the stories. Part of why it's here is good for you to see all these people that are succeeding in this tough environment. How many found that to be valuable? Just as a balanced perspective, say aye. Aye. Go read some autobiographies, but feed your mind every day. Condition your body every day. And then the third thing is become a master of influence by asking the right questions. And that's what I want to talk to you about. Questions are the answer. You want new answers for your life? You need new questions. You're not getting through to somebody. The answer of getting through to them is not to talk more. It's to ask them more. It's to get underneath. It's to discover. Remember I said the other day, to influence another human being, you have to know what already what? Influences them. You can't do that by talking to them. If I tell you something, you can doubt it. But if you tell me, by me asking you a question, you tell me how it is, it's true. That's the basis of influence for those who are more sophisticated. Now, there are lots of ways to influence. You can tell stories and metaphors. You can influence by example. You can influence by rewards or by pain. But the fastest way to influence is to get inside of somebody by questions. Questions are the answer. If you want to give somebody a gift, ask them the right question. Because all we experience in life, if I say to you, what did you just experience? Freedom. Your brain just searched 10 million files and went, don't know what that means. There's nothing in there. I don't know what that is. Right? Our experiences, we don't experience life. We experience our association to whatever we're stimulated by. So if I said to you, I want to tell you a story about my senior year in high school. And I start telling you about my senior year in high school, and there was this girl that I was so in love with. Now, by the way, I can go on and on and on, but you're not experiencing my story. You're experiencing your story. You went back to high school as soon as I start to tell it. And you're experiencing somebody you were interested in. Very quickly, you're going for a reference point you can relate to. How many see what I'm talking about here? If I want you to think about your mother, all I got to do is talk about mine. Because the only way you understand things is by referencing it. So questions cause you to go inside and reference things. The right question can change anything. Who's been with me at Date with Destiny where I take, okay, so people have been Date with Destiny know I do a program only twice a year. It's my favorite program because, frankly, I've already laid enough foundational things that now I can just do my art. And my art is I give people these things to do. They stand up, and it doesn't matter what's going to happen. Somebody may stand up and, they're frustrated because they've achieved everything they ever wanted and they made $100 million and they can't figure out why they're depressed. A real example of a lady I worked with just the other day. Completely depressed, so much so that she's saying, I don't think, she gave us a reference point of somebody, I don't know the person's name, but I guess they're famous in the art community. Somebody killed themselves, and she goes, I don't think people should be upset with him. I think you should be able to take your own life. What's that telling you? Right? So it's like, I've never lost a suicide in 30 years, out of thousands. It's one of the things I'm most proud of my entire life. Children, adult people. I don't say that to brag, I'm saying it because once you know a human being's needs, if you know what they're really after, and you know how to ask the right questions, you can connect them to any new experience of life you want them to be in. And I know all human beings have a need for certainty. Certainty they can be okay, they can avoid pain, they can have comfort or pleasure. Think of certainty as fundamental comfort. If you have no certainty that this floor was going to hold you up and we're on the 8th floor right now, you might not be paying attention to me. I remember once I did a seminar in Switzerland, and it was about 2,500 people. It wasn't a huge seminar, but we were in this building, and it was a building you usually did trade shows in, just like this one, you drive trucks in and so forth. But as we jumped, everybody was jumping in the room like that, and we were rocking. I took the house to a different level. The floor started going up and down as we're doing this much up and down, like a wave. By the way, how fast do you think people stopped jumping? And I could feel, we're all feeling, people looked around. So I called the building people, and we had everybody always come in. They did this inspection and everything else. Now, this is the first day of a 3-day UPW seminar. So those who've been to Unleash the Power Within with the firewalk and so forth know it makes what we did this week look like nothing because the intensity is at a whole different level. But it becomes fun because you become so strong so quickly. You're not sitting so much. You're in it. And I can't do 3 days of people sitting for that many hours. They'd be bored out of their mind. It wouldn't change. There'd be no transformation. So they come back and say, the building is fine. It has this much play. It's just trucks usually drive on once. They don't go up and down, up and down. It's a different motion. I said, are you absolutely positive? No problem. So I tell everybody that we're still going to jump up and down. Now, this is going to require some leadership. Does that make sense? What do I got to do? I got to be able to what? Influence them. And by the way, what do you think the likelihood is where everybody told them to start and there's just no way they're going to do it? I said, well, if they don't do it, we might as well not do the event because you can't physically sit still and not move because emotion is created by motion. So I said, it's not going to work for 3 days now. It must happen. So since it must, my job as leader is to influence them. So first thing I got to do is I got to own how important this is. I can't get you to own it if I don't own it. How many agree with me on this? Say I. If I own it like 90% or 95%, will I get everybody, yes or no? You don't get people to walk on fire by 90%. I think you'll probably do well. Right? I got to own it. And by the way, what if I said, okay, we're going to walk on fire. Okay, who wants to go first? Not me, somebody else. Somebody else go first. Right? As the leader, I always go first. Right? That's my job. So all I did was I divided up the room, and I realized they needed certainty. So I said, watch, we're going to do this with a small segment. We're going to divide you into 3 teams. And so I divided one section, second section, third section, and we all jumped, and I got them jumping, and the room didn't move, stop. And that's what we did. We went all weekend long on these 3 sections, and the room didn't shake. I figured out how to give them certainty till they forgot about it. It was totally fine, right? But whenever you're going to accomplish something, sometimes you got to break it down, but you got to provide this need for certainty. Everybody has a need for uncertainty. Everybody has a need for variety. We all have a need to feel like there's a surprise in our life. Who here loves surprises? Raise your hand, say I. You like the surprises you want. The surprises you don't want, you call problems. Isn't it true? But you need those too to feel alive. See, you like surprises that you're certain, you're not sure they're going to happen, but if they do, you're certain it'll feel good. Isn't it true? So people have a need for certainty. They need uncertainty. They need variety. They need stimulation. People have a need to feel significant, to feel unique, to feel special, to feel important. If you help people meet that need, trust me, the world is yours. I remember many years ago, Steve Wynn is a good friend of mine, and I love him. He's one of the most brilliant people I know. He's not only a genius entrepreneur, but he is an artist. He's one of the most creative people. Steve could talk about this lectern, and he could make it the most magnificent lectern you could possibly imagine. Tony, look at the metal on this. And he can just describe things in a way that are just unbelievable. So we were having dinner the very first time we ever met. It was New Year's one year, and fireworks were going off, and he and I were like totally into it. And we were talking about influence, that this is the ultimate skill in life of any business owner, and that's his only job is influence. He creates things, he loves that, but I can create all this. Guess how valuable this is if I can't influence you that it's valuable for you? 0. It dies. It stays in my house. So we're describing this, and I was describing these 6 human needs, certainty and uncertainty, and when I got to significance, he lit up like a Christmas tree. He goes, Tony, if you want to make billions, if you want to make billions of dollars, that's the one to give people. If you get them to link buying your product, makes them more significant, they'll spend any amount of money they want. He said, think about it. People get these little handbags. What do you mean by these handbags? And he said, they cost nothing to make. They pay thousands of dollars because it's got somebody's initials on it. It's not even made better. I can show you one that's made better that costs 1/100th of the price, 1/10th of the price. When he built the Win and then the Encore, $2.7 billion for a hotel. But guess what? When everybody else is freaking out, you go over to the Win right now, it's full. Because the people that want to be known as the best have got to go to the best place. That's the need structure you want to meet. 4th need, connection and love. Everybody needs connection. Everybody needs love. In fact, all we want that significance for is if we think if we're significant enough, people will love us. If I'm worth it, if I'm enough, if I'm beautiful enough, strong enough, smart enough, rich enough, intelligent enough, playful enough, funny enough, something enough, then I'll be loved. So if you're going to influence somebody, you got to know what's influencing in them is the need for certainty. And when you talk about change, you just mess with that. True? There's a need for uncertainty, but you got to show them how it's positive uncertainty, a variety. They need to feel significant, and gosh, what if you bring this new thing in to change and it doesn't work out as well for me? I feel stupid. I look like I failed. I feel insignificant. Love, gosh, I don't know if I'll even love myself if this doesn't go well. How many follow the pattern of what people get concerned about, right? So these first four needs, everybody finds a way to meet, even if they have to blame somebody else or work really hard or make up a story in their head. Everybody finds a way to be certain. Everybody finds a way to have varieties. Everybody has a way to be significant. Everybody has a way to feel at least connected, if not loved. But ultimately, the final two needs is everyone has to grow. Remember we talked about this first day? Progress equals happiness. If you grow, you feel alive. If you don't grow, you feel like you're dying. And so to influence people, people have this need for growth. And if they feel like they're growing with you, remember I said you can use fear to motivate them? That'll work for a while. You can use incentives. That'll work for a long time too, but there is a limit to incentives. The only thing that makes people feel fully alive long term is they feel happy because they're growing, they're expanding. Remember when Tony talked about how they took the same process of becoming a buyer for Zappos, but they broke it into more steps? Still 2 years, but you were a buyer level A, buyer qualified level B, level C, and people are like, yes, I made it. Progress, growth. And finally, what's the last need? Contribution. And you heard him and many others talk about, and you've seen the people here that are most successful feel like what they're doing has a meaning beyond themselves. Now, I'm reminding you of these 6 needs, and very quickly here, because if you and I are going to influence other people, we have to know what already influences them. And of those 6 needs, who has all 6 of these needs? Who would you say? Everybody. Who here has a need to be loved at some level, whether you admit it or at least connected? Say I. Who here needs to feel unique, special, important, significant? Raise your hand, say I. Including the people who go, I don't need to be special. No, I don't need that. I'm a Christian. Or I'm a Jew. Or I'm a Muslim. Or I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. They find a way to be unique. Everybody needs this. It's human nature. So we need all these needs to be met, but we don't need them all equally. We've learned to value some of these 6 more than others. Some value certainty more than anything else. And so they live their life trying to meet that need. And if you try to convince them how exciting this new project's going to be, you just messed up totally. What you got to tell them is, you know what, if we don't change this, do you realize what's going to happen? Do you think that what we have right now is certain and solid? Do you not understand this is evaporating between us? If you and I are going to have any certainty at all, this is what we must do immediately. And they're like, let's make it happen. Right? If you go to somebody who's more variety driven, some people, the top of their list, they all want certainty. They all want uncertainty. We all want them all. But we tend to have 2 that we value more than any others. Those 2 are the driving force in a person. So if somebody's variety driven and you go, okay, we're going to keep doing these same things because we got to keep fundamentally doing these elements. And the changes we're making, they're not that big because you're trying to convince people so that they won't be too fearful. You lost that person. You got to pull them aside and say, look, you and I got to understand something here. This is an entirely new game we're about to begin. Really? You'll have their total interest. You know, John here's doing a great job keeping the foundation going, but I need you to help me partner because we're going to enter something that's never been done before. If somebody's significance driven, which all of us have a need for significance, but if it's at the top of the list, you got to let them know what's going to come of this. It's going to make the game of this business so different than anybody else. How we're going to be better than anybody else, how we're going to take market share, how we're going to be number 1. You're going to have their full attention. And if somebody that's connection and love driven at the top, how are you going to approach them? Come on, how are you going to approach them? What are you going to say? Listen, we as a family got to do this. Let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to be stronger. We're going to love the hell of our customers. We're going to take care of them better than we ever have. These are the things that are going to connect us to each other and to our clients like never before. Do you realize what kind of family we're going to build by implementing this? They're in. If they're growth driven, it'll be obvious. You don't even have to explain it. They'll just see the growth opportunity and go for it. If they're contribution driven, it's very obvious. So you have to be able to bring your message to someone in a way that makes sense. Now, telling them is one thing, but asking them is even more powerful. See, if I tell you, you can feel I'm selling you, persuading you, influencing you. But if I ask you a question where you tell me, you own it. It's exactly what happens at Zappos when they take people for the first week, no matter what position they have, and they put them through an immersion, right? They put them through boot camp. And at the end of that week, what do they do with those people? Do you remember? They offer them what? $2,000 to leave. Right now, $2,000 to leave. Now that makes these people, see, instead of Zappos selling you more on We're the Best Culture, they gave them enough information, enough experience to hopefully get a good hit. But now it's the ultimate piece. I have to ask myself, am I on board or not? If I ask you, you might even be asking me, oh yeah, I'm ready to go. But for me to give up that money, I got to say, is this worth it? Is this worth more than $2,000? Is this the place I'm going to stay? Is this? And I got to ask all those questions. And then once I answer them, and I've answered them, I'm in. How many follow the difference here? Say I. This is a really, really powerful distinction. Instead of telling, you can tell, but ultimately you got to ask the question that brings someone there. So if you've ever watched me with somebody who's suicidal, or somebody's having a major challenge, or somebody's happy, wants to go to another level, I'll tell stories, I'll do examples, but ultimately the moments of influence happen at moments when I ask questions. And they make this connection in their head. And I'll say, if you continue with this, tell me how that's going to meet your dream. I did this with my daughter, I'll never forget. My daughter Jolie always wanted to be a dancer on Broadway. And she was very talented. Of course, I'm her father, right? So of course she's talented, right? But at one point, she's going to college and doing really well. She's based in Los Angeles. And she was winning all these dance competitions. And she came home for Christmas. And we're sitting down, and I said to her this question. I said, honey, how are you doing on your dream? And she said, what do you mean? She goes, I'm doing great in school. I got straight A's, and I'm going to dance classes. I said, I know, but I want to know, how are you doing on your dream? I didn't tell her how she was doing on her dream. You follow the difference here? I could say, Jolie, I'm concerned. You got straight A's in school, and you're doing great in dance classes, but you're not focusing on your dream, or I don't think your dream's coming about. If I start out with that, it wouldn't work. I got to ask. I got to make her break her own what? Break her what? Pattern. She goes, well, what do you mean? I said, your dream, you know what it is. What is it? Well, she goes, well, of course, the dance on Broadway. I said, uh-huh. And what are you doing? She goes, well, I'm going to school. I got straight A's, and I'm dancing. I said, are you dancing against people you're better than, or people that are better than you? What do you think her answer was? I'm better than them. I said, of course, because you're winning every time. That's a clue. So my question is, how do you get better playing against people you're better than? If you go out on a tennis court and you play against somebody that's twice as good as you are, even if you're a lousy tennis player, are you going to get better or worse playing against them as time goes by? Which one? You have to, just to stay on the court. If you sit across from somebody whose skill set is lower than yours, even though you want to practice as hard as you can, what's going to happen to your game eventually? It's going to go down. And you can just watch her process this. Now, if I said to her, you need to leave California, move to New York, and compete with other people, that probably wouldn't work too well. But I started out with, how you doing on your dream? And then I got her to say, what is your dream really? And I knew what the answer was. By the way, the best way to influence people, if you're trying to serve them, is you better know what you want to take them towards. As a leader, I got to know where I'm going to take you. That's my job. If you're a parent and you're not leading, your kid's leading you, you're not much of a parent. That doesn't mean your kids can't inform you, but there are points in life where you got to be able to lead them. And you can lead anyone wherever you want as long as you know where the outcome is and you ask the right questions. I could take a deck of cards, have you take out any card, see what the card is, and I can lead you that card. You take out, for example, the Ace of Hearts, the King of Hearts. And I say to you, well, let me ask you a question. A deck of cards has 52 cards in it, but they're broken up into 4 different suits, aren't they? What are they? Spades. What are they? Come on. Yeah. So as you think of those, pick one. Pick one. Hearts. And some of you won't pick hearts, so I'll say, pick another one. And if you only go down, I'll say, if you ask everything, I'll say, and that leaves until we finally get to hearts. Right? And then I'll say, of those hearts, there's one that's valued more than the other one. What one is it? I mean, I can lead you wherever I want. I'm going to get you to say the King of Hearts or I'm going to take you wherever I want to go with questions, but I better know first. So I say to her, by competing with these people who you're better than, because you told me you're better than them, so I'm not saying it, she's saying it, are you going to get better? What happens in these moments? She's making new connections in her head, new nuances, new beliefs. And she says, well, no, I'm not. I said, let me ask you another question. What's the life cycle on a dancer? I mean, can you be a dancer when you're 40, start when you're 40, 35, make it on Broadway? She goes, no. I said, how old are you? She goes, what do you mean? How do you know who I am? I said, oh, just how old are you now? She goes, well, I'm 21. I said, when would now be a good time for you to start? Now? Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. She said, what do you mean? And I said, honey, everything I've done in my life has been based on modeling, but also there's something in me that most people don't realize has really made me successful, and that's a sense of urgency. I do not settle. I do not wait. You wait and it's over. If you allow something to distract you, at the moment you're about to get the most important information you need in your life. What do you think the price is? And I said, no, it's called utilization. By the way, I will tell you this aside. One of the greatest skills in your life as an influencer is I call utilization, which is whatever happens, use it. That's the greatest gift you can give yourself in business and life. Whatever happens, use it. If you're aware that whatever happens is always an asset to your outcome, if you have the belief it's always an asset, I just need to know how to use it, then everything in life plays to you. It might be another metaphor, what Tony from Zappos talked about when he had those people take the test, say, am I lucky, extremely lucky to unlucky? Remember that? And ironically, the people that think they're extremely lucky have a different life. They have a different life because they utilize everything. They see everything as to their advantage. Anyway, with my daughter, basically what I said to her was, honey, I want you to get, you think I'm a genius. And I said, and I am. But I said, my deepest genius is urgency. I am one hungry mofo. I will not let an opportunity pass me by. I will not see something that's possible and go, well, I'll try that later. I grab it. I grab it right then by the hair. I crush it. I go after it. It isn't just talent. You know, how many talented people do you know who have unbelievable talent, but they never lived their dream? How many people you know that are brilliant and are depressed? How many people you know that have up to degrees in education but can't fight their way out of a paper bag? By the way, you're all answering those questions. You don't have to answer them out loud. I usually, in an audience, invite them to answer that out loud because it creates momentum and energy and keeps your energy high. But I don't have to use that style. I could use anybody's style as long as I ask the questions. The answers are going to show up, aren't they? And even if you say no, that's still an answer, isn't it? So I said to her, honey, I said, is this making sense? She goes, yeah, but what are you proposing? And now she's open. How many follow? Right? Because she now believes I've got to do something. If I stay on this path, it's not going to happen. There's not enough time. I'm 21 years old. I said, well, honey, how have I ever succeeded? What have you seen me do? What is the secret to me compressing decades in a day? She goes, modeling. I said, that's right. I find the best in the best. I won't settle until I find the very best. Not somebody good, somebody who's the very best. And I go figure out everything they do so I can compress decades into days. You need to go model or work with the best person in your industry in the world who happens to be in New York. And you need to train with them. And it's not enough to model somebody. You got to take massive what, my friends? Massive what? You can come here and model all the people here, but if you don't do anything with it, it's over. It's not going to happen. So I said, you got to take massive action. She says, well, what are you proposing? I say, leave school, move to New York, go into training. I will pay for the training as long as you have a full-time job paying for your housing. Because I want you to be a working actress, and as long as you're going on auditions. You can't just go train and work. You have to find a way for auditions too. You do that, I'll pay for you to be able to go there. I'll pay for your training. You pay for your housing. So that's really scary. That's a lot. That's a lot. When would I do this? She goes, I'm in the middle of school. I said, when would now be a good time? She goes, you mean like right now? I said, what do you think? She says, in the middle of the school year? I said, yes. She said, but you're the one who told me to go to college. I said, I was wrong. I said I wasn't wrong about college. I'm glad you're going to college. You got straight A's, and you can go back and do that later. You're not going to run out of time to go to college. You're not going to lose any of your credits. But you're running out of time to become a dancer. I said, I don't know if you're that skilled. I think you're gifted, but I'm your father. Of course I think you're gifted. You could be ugly. I still think you're beautiful. You actually were when you were born, kind of like a lizard. I still thought you were cool. Right? So I said, the only way we're going to know is if you get in it. Because I said, there's one emotion I don't ever want you to have in your life, my girl, and that's regret. That's an emotion I don't want you to ever have. That's up to you. But if I can help you from not having it, that's what I'm talking to you right now. And if you don't take this shot now, you tell me what level of regret you might have later in life. She goes, wow. Right here, right in the middle of school, right in the middle of Christmas vacation. So guess what? She said to me, do you mind if I ask anybody else their opinion? Sure, people pay me $1 million a year for me to coach them. But you should frickin' ask somebody else what they think. Not a problem. Who are you thinking of? And she said, no, Dad. She goes, of course I respect your opinion, but you've always taught me to go to the area where there's the greatest expert. And she said, the greatest experts are people in the business. I said, you're right. Who are you thinking of? And she said, well, I was thinking of so-and-so, this gentleman who's at CAA, who was a good friend of mine, and she knew him. He's one of the top guys at CAA. And I said, he's actually a brilliant idea. I said, that's smart of you to do that. Check it out. She goes, okay, I will. I said, when? She said, now would be a good time? Now would be a good time. So she literally went in the other room, and as she goes to the other room, he's one of my friends. I call him right then and there while he's doing a true story. I said, look, I just talked to Jolie. I only have 30 seconds. I talked to Jolie. Here's the deal. You know this. She's here, straight A's, da-da-da. I said, I told her she go to New York because that's where dancing is, and she needs to be in proximity, doesn't she? Proximity is power. He goes, Tony, you're absolutely right. I said, if it's not right, tell her it's not right. Is it right? It's right. Tell her that. Bye. No exaggeration. She walks in 3 minutes later and says, the line's busy. I left a voicemail. So I said, honey, don't leave a voicemail. Call back again. You know him. He's on the line all the time. She always calls him. Long story short and true story, she talks to him on the phone. He talks to her for like an hour and a half. She comes back a couple hours later. God, Dad, I had the greatest conversation. It was the right thing to do. And he says it's absolutely right. And we talked about why and how and all those things. And so I said, okay, great. I said, you can't be a prophet in your own land, I guess, around here. But I looked at her and said, Father knows best. She laughed. We laughed about it. So I took my little sunshine girl who was used to living in Southern California and going to the beach, right? I took her to New York during one of the worst winters New York had in like 15 years. And put her in this crappy little apartment deliberately because I wanted her to be hungry, right? And sure enough, she went and she trained with some unbelievable people, and she kept going on these things. And less than 6 months later, she called me up at one time and she said, Dad, she goes, I have a little surprise for you. When you come to New York? And I told her, and she said, okay, well, I want to pick you up from the airport. Sure enough, I get to the airport. She's not there, but there's a car there for me. A little note. I said, Dad, I just have a little surprise. And so I'm okay. So I get in the car, and I'm excited to see my daughter, and the car drives by her apartment, and we go down to downtown Broadway. They pull up in front of a place, and there's a play called Tommy, if you remember that classic play, right? And on the headlines, I see my daughter's name. Within 6 months, she was on Broadway. The whole thing happened just from that process, ladies and gentlemen. It was really great. Influence is the game. You must lead your children, you must lead yourself, you must lead your business, which means you can lay down law, foundation, principles, distinctions, you can tell stories, you can give examples, but ultimately you must ask for the order. You must ask for the action. And you must ask in a way where they're already convinced because they know it's right inside of them, not because of the power of your personality. Because the power of your personality will go away. But see, when I went away, she already owned all this. How many follow the difference here? Say I. Plus, you'll learn a lot. You'll learn. You'll find out I'm trying to influence do something may not be right. Maybe the better thing is some mixture between what I thought and they thought. You'll find that by asking questions. You can't just ask questions where you're only trying to get to the outcome. You got to have the overall outcome, and you got to be open to what's happening as feedback along the way. And you got to know what people need: certainty, variety, significance, connection and love, growth, contribution. And you got to know which one of those they value most to get their attention. You got to start with what they value, not what you value. See, most people think influencing someone is getting them to do something. Well, if I said to somebody here, okay, I'll give $1 million to the first person up here who's naked within the next 15 seconds, trust me, that's not influence. Any idiot could pull that off. That's a bribe. And that's what some of you do with the people you manage. You try to bribe them, and you go, look how well they're doing for a while until that gets old. Till being naked gets old or $1 million gets old. $1 million gets old. Who knows what I'm talking about here? Yeah, some in this room know $1 million isn't squat. Whatever you're around, you get familiar with, it loses its intangible quality. So you got to be constantly thinking this game about how to meet these people's needs, and you got to use questions to do it. Who else do you got to ask quality questions of, my friends? Who? Ourselves. If you want to get yourself in state every day, what are you going to do? Feed your mind? What are you going to do? Condition your body? What are you going to do? Ask better. Not, how am I going to survive this economic downturn? That kind of question, you're going to feel like hell, and you're going to do like hell. Because that's going to put you in a state where you're not going to come up with any answers. So what are some of those questions? Well, in my own life, I learned to ask questions that were very helpful to me. I learned just to go, instead of saying, I'll give you an example. I remember I was on the road. I'd been 120 days in a row on the road. 100 of those days I'd been on a stage. My voice was gone. My body was gone. Because most of the things I do are not like this, where it's you guys are sitting in chairs and it's casual and talking for a few hours. It was a 50-hour day, weekends. Bam, 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 bam. And then the full time in between, and then flying 12 hours. Crazy. And I got home, and I was burnt out. I was physically burnt out. And I got home, and the first day I was home, I had 100 and something phone calls. Now, this is obviously the days before email, because I thought 100 phone calls was really just horrific. Right? I was like, 100 phone calls, and these were the questions I asked myself. I was like, what the hell is the matter with my life? How did I end up in this pit? By the way, I was living in a 10,000 square foot castle overlooking the ocean in Del Mar, California, while I was saying this to myself. But can you hypnotize yourself with questions, yes or no? Questions have presuppositions, like the man who came the other day and said, well, how can I do this when it's impossible? That's basically what he said to me. He said, how can I double my business when, no one is buying anything anymore? Well, if you ask a question built with a negative presupposition, you're in pain. You asked a better question. So I said to him, is there any other person you could sell to? Is there any other service you could create? Is there any other market that exists in the world? You get new answers when you ask new, but we ask the same questions over and over again. So I'm going, why did this happen to me? And why do I have to respond to all these people? But then what I did is I realized to change my state. I went and drank some water. I was dehydrated, shook my body out. Said, what I'm going to do first? I'm going to just go for a little run. Went for the run, got my body changed, and the state changed. New focus came with new questions. I started thinking, you know what? I would have died to have some of these people call me 4 or 5 years ago. One was the President of the United States on that list. Another was a guy who's now one of my dearest friends that I remember I used to be a fan of this man. He's just a genius of a man. And now he's one of my best friends. And so I asked myself, how did I get so lucky to get these people in my life? How did I get so lucky to have 100 people want to talk to me in a day? There was a time I can remember in a 400 square foot bachelor apartment in Venice, California, when I heard the song, I Am, I Said, and no one heard, not even the chair. And I sat there with tears, thinking my life had no meaning, and I mattered to nothing and no one. Sometimes it's good to ask a question that reminds you that whatever you think is stressful today was something you would have dreamed about at one time in your life. To have a foreground, you need a background. Sometimes it's useful to remember your background. So I asked myself, okay, why do I want to call these people back? Is there a presupposition there, yes or no? What would be great about calling these people back? Well, I said, actually, I want to catch up with Peter. And pretty soon, instead of having to do it, does the state you do something in affect the people you deal with, yes or no? And your state is affected by what you focus on. And what you focus on is controlled by questions. So then I thought, a better question. I said, how can I make all 100 of these phone calls and enjoy the process? Because for me, it meant sitting down, being all crunched up, going in there, talking, not breathing, not eating, not anything, 100 calls, right? And I looked out the window as I saw that outside. It was a sunny, beautiful day, and there was sitting my swimming pool and jacuzzi overlooking the ocean. And I said, I'm calling everybody from the jacuzzi. Because I asked a better question. How could I make these calls and totally enjoy the process? I didn't get the answer. So if you keep asking, that's the secret. Ask and you shall. But you got to ask consistently, and you got to ask in a state of certainty. Not like, well, what do I do? You know, that's not going to do. I said, how can I make this call and totally enjoy it? I went, I'm going to call for the freaking jacuzzi overlooking the ocean. If I wasn't making the calls, that's where I'd be. So why wait? So I took my little list down. I got not my cell phone, but my little extender phone out, right? And I sat in that swimming pool and talked and laughed. I remember why I was calling everybody. And before I called them, I thought about all the things that we'd done together or what was cool I wanted to share with them. And I made all the calls. I didn't reach everybody, nobody was reachable, but I made all the calls I could possibly make. And I was in that jacuzzi for about 3 hours, and they came out like I looked like I was 4,000 years old. But I was so relaxed, and I had the best time, and all the calls got made just because I asked a better what? If you want to influence somebody, ask a better question. That's the whole game. If you have a problem, people tell me all the time, I have a problem with that. And I say, what's your question? Because all you're saying when you have a problem is there's a question that you have that's not been answered. Problems are really questions that have not been answered. But when you state them not as a question, you forget that you're after an answer. So, tell me your problem in your business, sir. Funding. What's your question? What's your question? Because by the way, when you go, my problem is funding, guess what you got? Now you have a problem. It's yours. You get to hang on to it. You get to label it my effing problem. You get to show people your problem. You get to talk about your problem, but nothing changes. Nothing changes until you get an answer to what really is going on. What really is, it's a problem because you haven't formed it as a question. If you got the question and you keep asking it, and you ask it with enough certainty, playfulness, creativity, you ask it of the right people, you ask it enough people, ask and you shall what? Seek and you shall. Now, you don't have to be religious. Those are useful terms to remember because it's true. But the problem is still your problem because you haven't formed it as a quality question. You know, say, I got a question. How come I can never get funding? Yeah, that's like somebody says, how come, I can never lose weight? And your brain goes, because you're a pig, right? If you ask a lousy question, you get a lousy. It's true of your customers, true of yourself, true of your clients, true of the people that work with you. So what's your question, sir?
My question is, how can I go out and talk to some people and let them understand what a great investment that bullet hire is?
Okay, give me a hand. That's a nice question. Very nice. And stand up, sir. And now tell me the answer. In fact, tell me 3 answers because I want to show you all something. Problems get solved only when you adopt this philosophy. No more than 5% of my time on the problem. 95% of my time on the solution. In most organizations, if you took the amount of time they spent talking about the frickin' problem and what caused the problem and where the problem came from and who's responsible for the problem and how the problem emerged, is it that ratio, yes or no? No, it's not 5% of the time, is it? It's probably almost reverse. It's usually 70, 80% of the time on the problem. If you're lucky to get 20% on the solution, it's usually 5 or 10% of the time on the solution. I'm talking about core, total focus, where you've crystallized what the question is you need the answer to. And that's where you've been. You've been focused on this thing called a problem, and there is no thing called a problem once you form a question, if it's a quality question. So one thing I used to do in my seminars in the very beginning You know, in the big seminars, like here, I can mingle amongst you because I can get out and get back out again. But in my big seminars, most of you know I have security. It's not so like I want security. It's because I couldn't physically function. But once you get to 2, 3, 4, 5,000 people, 10,000 people, there's just too many people. It's overwhelming, and people won't let me go, and I couldn't function. I couldn't move around. So what I did in the beginning days before I had security is people would run up to me here, and they all want to get their question answered. And I got a process in between because I'm running the frickin' thing. And I can't do anything. I can't go to the bathroom. I think that's why I developed bladder control. It's because the break was over and I was still standing there with 20 people, right? So I came up with a plan, and I implement this in every company in this room. And I actually thought about this, something we even could implement in our big seminars, even the large seminars would be easy to do as well. People all want me to give them the answer. And I'm happy to give them an answer, my answer, which might be a good answer, might not be, but it's the best one I can give you. But even if I give you the best answer, wouldn't it be better if you came up with the answer? Because I come up with it a little bit if you're a little annoyed that I had the answer and you didn't. First, you're happy to have the answer. Then later on, you're a little pissy because you went, oh, I could have thought of that answer. I'm doing the show for NBC. It's called Breakthrough with Tony Robbins. And in order to get the show, I show them all these films of people I turn around. You know, I take the impossibles is what I want. The people that have been in therapy for 20 years, or the person who's suicidal, or the relationship that's over. And I just live to take the impossible, make it possible. Now, by the way, in relationships, sometimes it's better for them to be apart. So I don't want to keep the impression that we always keep people together, because that's not necessarily the goal. But I said, go find some people of your own, so you know I didn't get specially good, pick the right person. You will pick anybody, and I'll turn them around. And so, sure enough, they went out and found some people. And one of the persons they got was a man who they went to a speech pathologist and said, could you turn somebody around who's stuttering? Who's been doing it for years? Of course, I could do it easily. I said, really? He said, sure. I said, get the worst stutterer you could possibly find, search all pathologists, speech pathologists, find their worst patient. I'll have it in an hour. And they look at me going, really? It's really? So they get me this man. He's been stuttering since he's 2 years old. His name is Rashad. He's a really wonderful soul. About 30 years old. Some of you met Rashad. Some of you know what I'm talking about, right? Some people are clapping. It's because he came to an event. They got to see this man. And so they sent me they brought him to see me. Guy's been stuttering since he's 2. It took him like 3 minutes to say his name. He's like this, going like this. I'm sitting there very patiently, right? Waiting for him to say his name. You can imagine that tempo in my life. So anyway, he finishes his name, and the long story short is, I get him to stop stuttering within 20 minutes, within an hour completely, within 5 hours, because I want to change his whole life, not just stop his stuttering, change everything. And I got him to remember a moment in his life when he started stuttering. And he couldn't remember. I said, what's the earliest memory you have in life? By the way, how am I influencing him right now? Guess who else is starting to search for the earliest memory in their lives? So I said to him, what's the earliest memory in your life? And he thought for a while, he was, I don't know. I said, I know you don't know, but if you did, what would it be? And he finally says, I was 2 years old. I was eating cereal with my brother watching cartoons. I said, okay. What was the cereal? Cocoa Puffs. That's not it. I said, what was the cartoon? He said, Rocky and Bullwinkle. And I said to him, didn't Bullwinkle always stutter? And his eyes got like this big. He said, yeah. I said, whenever he was in trouble, he stuttered, and then Rocky came and saved him. He watched this unbelievable transformation. I said, something happened before that day, because whenever someone has locked down that day, you have a memory before it, you've just blocked it. And I eventually got him to remember the night before his father had brutally beat his mother. And then he didn't know what to do when he was watching Rocky and Bullwinkle, and he started stuttering. And sure enough, Rocky comes to the rescue. His dad stopped beating his mother because he had to deal with his son stuttering out of control. So unconsciously, he became the problem, so the father had to focus on him instead of beating up his wife/mother. I said, that worked really well for a 2-year-old, Rashad, but not very good for a 30-year-old, Rashad. Does it? Is that what you want? All of it is setting something up and asking the question. Anyway, the transformation is incredible. The next day, the reasons people clapped in the room is, the transformation is amazing. I had him find a part of himself that was like a warrior because he was kind of a beat down guy, and he got up in front of 5,000 people and just took the place. It was like, if NBC had not found him, they thought for sure he was a plant, that I'd done this thing, because he looked like an evangelist speaker, and I didn't tell him anything except, I'm probably going to call on you tomorrow. All right, that's all I told him. He took the stage, and then I brought him to Date with Destiny, and I picked him for the most difficult process in Date with Destiny, and no one in the room who wasn't in the first seminar knew, no one could tell he ever stuttered. So the reason I tell you this story, though, is guess what happened at the end? He wrote me a letter to thank me and told me that it was the most incredible experience of his life, but it took him 3 weeks to deal with something. And what was that? And it was that I had cured his stuttering and he hadn't. That God should have got the credit, not me. And I said, well, I give God all the credit. That's why I sent back. He said, no, but I realized, my wife said, are you crazy? Are you insane? But that's how much we have a need for significance. Some people have their problem and keep their problem, even though answers are all around them, because they want to be the one to solve it. Just remember, human needs drive everything. And for him, the need to be significant was very, very high. And if he didn't do it in his belief system, then it wasn't as significant. So even though it was euphoric, he even went back and started stuttering again so he could kind of like have a problem. And so his wife pointed this out to him, and then all of a sudden it became very clear and he shifted. Now I tell you all that, though, to come back to you, which is what I want you to do in a memo. Here's your memo. And then I'll ask you. Your memo in the room, what I have people do is instead of coming to me for the answer, because if they came to me for the answer, I give them the answer, and what happens? They like it for a while, and later on, he did it. Now, not everybody's that way, don't get me wrong. But I told you the story because some people are Rashad. Their whole life has changed. Everything's more than they could ever dream of, and later on, there's something inside of them pissed off about it. So if I can be part of what helps you, but you do the major work, or you make the final thing, you're going to own it more. So what I would do with people is I'd say, simple. Here's your problem. I want you to write down what the problem is and describe it in 2 sentences max. This is your memo. 2 sentences, crystal clear that anybody will understand it. If you have to write more than 2 sentences, you have to tell them a paragraph, the question doesn't work. It has to be maximum of 2 sentences, ideally 1, so crystal clear anybody can understand it. That's number 1. So you write that down. You write down, define the problem with precision. Describe the problem or the request. And sometimes it's not a problem, sometimes it's a request. Can we turn the air conditioning up? Can we turn it down? Can we have lunch at whatever time? Can we do this? Can we do that? Whatever the request may be. So you write it down. Then the second thing I have them do is describe 3 solutions to their request or problems. 3, and I use keywords, 3 cost-effective, intelligent, viable solutions. Might be viable, time viable, resource viable, whatever the case may be, viability. So what are 3 intelligent, practical, viable solutions that you believe we can implement, to solve this, or to meet this need? By the way, why do I have them come up with 3? Someone tell me why. 1 choice is no choice. 2 choices is a dilemma. Until you have 3 choices, you're not at choice. That's my rule in life. You may not like all the choices. Whenever you think you have 1 choice is no choice. If you got 2, you're in a dilemma. There's always at least 3 choices. Plus, I'm making that person become a problem solver. If I solve the problem, they'll just have a new problem for me to solve. But if I can teach them to be a problem solver, the game changes. How many follow? Now, sometimes this is less efficient, but with a mass audience, it was very efficient. And then they turn that in, and then I then have a choice. I can now respond back by saying, circle, I accept your request, or I think solve the problem, we'll do it with your number 1. Or I could modify it, I'm willing to do that, but I think we need to do this, and this is the way to do it. Or I could reject it and tell them why. And then we'd have this communication. It was very efficient. This is very different than, tell me what you think we should do in a suggestion box. So now, tell us your question, and then tell us at least 3 answers. That are quality answers, viable answers.
Okay, the question is, how can I influence people to put in money into my company and help me change the entire recruiting industry?
Wow, give me a hand for that. That's a different question than you had before. Now, sometimes your question has too many outcomes in it simultaneously. Sometimes, I'm going to raise enough money to do this and change the whole recruiting industry. That might be over-chunked. There's two ways to chunk. You can chunk something at 8 million bites and it's overwhelming, or you can try to eat the entire whale with one bite, which is also overwhelming. Too many chunks, you're overwhelmed. Only one big chunk, you're going to be overwhelmed. But I like your question. What's the essence of your question, though? What's the burning part of your question? What's the one that's most burning? In that question, tell me one more time, what is your deepest question right now?
My deepest question is, how do I get the funding I need to put in place to hire the right people, to implement the right marketing and sales activities, to continue to have the resources to do what my company does, that I can bring this to the rest of the world.
So you see, it's getting better, but he's still making it over chunk. How much money do you need to do that?
About 1.5 M.
And do you have a clear, specific plan?
Yes, I do.
And does it have a track record that you can manage?
Yes, I do.
And do you have management that people who are investors would say their participation would significantly reduce my risk?
Yes.
Then what's your answer? Give me three. Give me three clear answers that are viable, intelligent, practical, and you could act on immediately.
Go on Twitter. Ask who wants to change the whole recruiting industry and make it simple and easy for any hiring manager, for any job seeker to apply for positions. And by the way, you can make $1 million in 3 to 4 years.
That won't work on Twitter. There's only 140 characters.
Okay. Who would like? The answer is go to Twitter and ask ask the question of who wants to change the recruiting industry, and I can show them how it can be done, and if they can be a part of this and also make $1 million.
Okay, so that's one approach. Go to a medium online, Twitter might be one example, where I could get people's eyeballs and make a request where it's very compelling both in a sense of transformation and economic return. How many follow? Okay, give me another answer.
Go out to my personal network and just start talking to people and showing them what my system does and what the growth potential and our management team, and then ask them to be a part of it.
Great. What's the third answer?
Continue to talk to venture capitalists and continue to tell the story to them about how we're progressing.
Great. And I bet you could come up with 3 more right now if I asked you to, couldn't you?
Most likely.
Yes. So what do you feel right now differently than a few moments ago, if anything?
I know I can make this happen.
That's right. Give him a hand, first of all, for that right now. That's the process. Why? Why? Why do you know?
Because I've been in this industry for so long. I know where all the holes are. I know how companies waste a bazillion amount of millions of dollars a year. I know how inefficient the recruiting process is. I know how laborious it is. And our system takes about 80% of that and completely wipes it away.
Great. Now I want you to notice something. Clarity is power. By making himself be more clear, be more brief, be more precise in the form of a real question that's actionable, and then just demanding an answer in a state of certainty, he's got them. But most of us don't have this as a discipline. So let me offer you 2 in the form of 4 questions. First, give him a hand. Thank you very much. Problem-solving questions. So here, let me give you 6 questions, problem-solving questions. The first question I ask when a problem comes up, the most important question, is not what the F, not why did this happen to me, not who screwed who to make this happen. The first question is, what's great about this, or what can I learn from this? Immediately, it's like, what's great about this? What's great about this? The first question I tend to ask is, what's great about this? Now, by the way, the answer I often get initially is, what do you think? Nothing. Because if you're in a lousy state, you go, what's great about this? Your brain's going to go, nothing, you idiot. And I go, I know it looks like nothing, but if there was something great about it, what's great about this? And I demand the answer. By the way, seek and you shall what? Ask and you shall. And I don't care who it is. If you ask with authority and certainty, you get an answer. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine came to see me one time, years ago. He was at his wit's end. He was a lawyer, and he had been in partnership with another lawyer, a friend of his, for, 12, 14, 15 years. Let's say 15 years rounded up. And one day, the partner of his had a midlife crisis and decided he didn't want the pressure of being a partner in the firm, and he quit the firm. He just announced to his 15-year partner, I'm out. I'm moving out. I'm moving away. I'm getting a divorce. I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. I'm out. I'm leaving the firm. And now he's got reputation, money, overhead, all this stuff tied to him. So he comes to me, he says, Tony, I can't handle this. I can't take on his cases. It's going to hurt our reputation. I don't have anybody else I can bring in here. We're both still in the building phase in this firm. Without him, also with sweat equity in this thing, just go hire somebody who can't work. And he is on and on and on and on, and he's pissed off and he's frustrated. And underneath it all, he's scared, really scared. He doesn't know how he can keep the thing together. He can't keep the overhead. And so I let him talk on and on. So I look at him and I say, I just have to ask you a question that you're going to think I look like an idiot. And you're going to say, stop being Tony Robbins. But I can't. It's me. So I have to ask you the Tony Robbins question. He said, what's that? I said, what's great about this? And I said, I know on the surface it's the most absurd question to ask. That's why it's the best question to ask. The best question is often the one everybody else thinks is absurd. Because what everybody else thinks like is why everybody else is stuck. Right? You ask the question nobody else would ask. And one of the greatest questions to ask is what's great about this? But make yourself come up with the answer. If you can't come up with it, change your state and ask it. So I changed the state by saying pussy boy and finally getting him to laugh. First getting him a little pissed off. I don't mind getting somebody pissed off because when they're angry, energy goes through their body. I can take anger and convert it into something else that's different than defeated. Does that make sense? So I get him angry and then a little playful, and finally he goes, well, I said, look me in the eye and tell me you loved your partner and wanted to be with him forever. Tell me you wanted to have sex with him. Come on, tell me. So what am I doing? Breaking his what? So once I break his pattern enough, he goes, honestly, he said he's been a pain in the ass for the last 8 years. I said, what's great about this? He said, what's great about this is it makes me no longer settle for the wrong partner. And when he got that, it changed the meaning and it changed the game instantly just by answering this question. How many follow this? Say aye. What I've been endeavoring to do, and what Chet and all of us have been endeavoring to do this week, is give you the answer to the question of what's great about this economy. How many starting to get what's great about it now? Say aye. Because now you have the ultimate advantage when you look forward to recession. When you look forward to it, let's not be harsh. We're just like, yeah, give me the recession, baby. Give it to me. When you can do that, it's not some fake positive thinking, rah-rah BS, but it's based on intelligence that says there's no greater opportunity than now for me to be able to build my business where the costs are lower and the opportunity is greater. There's never been a time, if I can just keep my wits about me, be strong, be intelligent, keep focused, apply some of these disciplines. How many agree? Say aye. So we've been trying to answer that question for you without saying it to you. Because once you get that answer, the game changes. So sure enough, I ask him, okay, what's great about this? And he starts, what else is great about it? I don't let him tell me one thing, because what makes things stick is stacking. One after another after another. What else is great about this? He goes, well, I don't have to settle for the wrong partner anymore. He said, also, I can't really afford this location, and I don't really like where our office is. Where we are is 1,000,000 miles away from my house. So now I would have been stuck here because he lives near here, and I'd never want to push him. I'd be stuck here for the next 5-10 years, driving with worse and worse traffic. You know what? I could get my office. I have to finish the lease, but I could then move to the beach. I got an office looking over the ocean. I love the ocean. Now, by the way, what do you think's happening to his state? Okay, I'm not stuck with that bastard anymore. I used to be upset with leaving. And I'm not stuck in this location. Oh, wow. Okay, what else? What else? He said, well, I don't know. What else is great is it's going to make me grow. It's going to make me get out of my box. It's going to make me, and when I get enough of these things to state change, I go to the next question. I said, okay, what can you learn from this? He said, I can learn to never settle again because I knew in the beginning he was wrong. Good lesson. What else can you learn from this? That I've avoided confrontation and given up a great amount of the juice and freedom of my life, and I won't do that anymore. Wow. By the way, is this now really a gift of an experience? Yes or no? We're getting into some real deep stuff, just asking a couple questions. So what's great about this? Would I learn this? I said, okay, here's a great question. What's not perfect yet? What does that presuppose, my friends, when I say what's not perfect yet? That it's going to be what? Perfect. That's different than if you go, well, how will I survive? That presupposes you may not. What's not perfect yet? He goes, well, what's wrong is, I said, no, I didn't ask what's wrong. I asked what's not perfect yet. Language creates emotion. So you got to use the right words here. What's not perfect yet? He goes, well, what's not perfect yet is I don't have enough money to cover the monthly overhead without a partner. I said, okay, what else is not perfect yet? What's not perfect yet is I'm not clear about how I could cover his accounts. What else is not perfect yet? We're not doing this in our head, we're writing it down. In your head, you'll go in a circle. Write it down, it has a whole different game, doesn't it? It keeps us from going in a circle. It's right in front of you, you can deal with it. So guess what? We come up with what's not perfect yet. As we're looking at what's not perfect yet, I said, okay, now here's the question. What are you willing to do to make it the way you want it? What are you willing to do to make it the way you want it? He said, what do you mean, what am I willing to do? I'm asking you point blank. See, people that are willing to do anything at all to make it the way they want it, they'll find a way. If all of you in this room think about your business and you think about what you want your business to become, or you think about your life and you think about what you want your life to be like, you think about what it is you say you want, what are you willing to do to make that happen, to get that funding? You tell me. Anything? Because if you can make a list of all things you never would want to have to do to raise that money, and you can look at yourself in the eye and go, I'm willing to do all of these things as much as I hate them, and your gut can do that, I'll tell you what will happen. You'll raise the money and you won't have to do probably 90% of that, but you might have to do 10% of it. But most of you don't ever look at it. You don't realize there's something inside of you you're not willing to do, and you're afraid you might have to, and so you don't do everything that's necessary to raise that money. You go to the 90% and then you go, gosh, it's just, I'm not there yet. I know I'm going to get there. You got to get to that point where what are you willing to do? Because if you're not willing, you might say, well, here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to, he says to me, I'm willing to take this on and stop. I'm willing to take this on. I think the first thing he said is, I'm willing to take this on and find a way to either grow the firm or shrink it and keep it above the line. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to keep the firm above the line. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it not go broke. I said, well, what else are you willing to do? Well, I'm willing to make it profitable. I'm willing to work extra hours. I'm willing to, if necessary for the next 6 months, double cover cases. I'm willing to call in favors. I'm willing, and we write it all down. How many are following this process? Then there's another question you got to ask yourself that's also very, very, very important, and that is, what am I willing to not do? In other words, I'm willing to do this to make it work. What am I willing not to do to make this the way I want it? What am I willing to do? But then what am I willing not to do to make this the way I want it? And I use this confusing language on purpose to break his what? You're willing to do this, what are you not willing to do? How many follow this? You know, I'm not willing to whine. I'm not willing to become a defeated man over this. Right? I'm not willing to be in a position where I live in fear and stress every day. I don't have to. I can just decide how I want to make it work, and I'm going to make it that way. I'm not willing to make him my excuse for being frustrated every day. That starts to solve the real problem, doesn't it? And then finally, how can I enjoy the process? How can I solve this? How can I create this, but also enjoy it? That was like me going outside in the jacuzzi. How can I enjoy the process? And he said, you know, I could make my son my partner. I said, what? He said, my son is graduating from school, and honestly, there was no space for him here. We couldn't afford to bring him on. But I'm thinking, that's so stupid. I could mentor him. We could be sharing together. He could be in the firm here. If this place was at the beach, he'd want to be there for sure. So would I. And he came up with this whole vision. And in 5 or 6 questions, he went from depressed, overwhelmed, no future, to the life of his dreams is now being created because of this gift that just happened in his life. That's the power of questions. We were at lunch for an hour. But, you know, the minute he got that this was great, what was great about this, the job was 80% done. How many follow us? The minute you go from problem to question, you start to find the solution. Because answers only come from new questions. Now, I did change his what. Well, I asked the question, change his what? And that's what you got to do as well. That's why I said you got to know what does it that influences people. It's the state they're in, and it's their blueprint. The state is the mental, emotional state they're in, which you can change by changing their physiology or their focus. The blueprint is that they're trying to meet these needs. And they have a map. His map was, I'm supposed to have a partner, we're supposed to do this, and supposed to do that, and then that gets me where I want to be. My new truth was, he wants love, he wants significance, he wants certainty, he wants variety, he wants growth, and he wants contribution. I'm going to get him to see that this meets all those needs. But if I tell him that, he'll doubt it. But if I ask him these questions, he'll find it, he'll tell me, and it'll be true. How many follow the difference here? Okay? By the way, who would these questions be really good to ask of? And by the way, can you feel the room right now? What are you feeling right now? How many of you are like in your head really thinking right now, but let me see your head really, you feel the energy room is very different. Like people inside going like, what is this thing, you know? Could it really be that easy? 6 freaking questions? But I'll tell you a secret. You must ask these from a great state, and you must make yourself come up with many answers, and you must write them down. A, you must ask them from a great state. So if you're not in a great state, change it. How do you do that? Radical change in your body or your focus or both. 2, you got to ask them from a place of certainty. 3, give multiple answers. Lots of reasons why this is great. Lots of what you've learned from this. Lots of what you're willing to do. Lots of what you're not willing to do anymore in order to have this work. Right? All those pieces. Lots of what you're willing to do to not only get the job done, but enjoy the process. Because if you stack it, you'll own it. Does that make sense? So you can do this with yourself. You can do this with anyone else. This is an ultimate discipline. What will get you in a good state in the morning is if you ask a few good questions. So let me try this for you. Talk to you about what do leaders do? They change organizations by solving problems and maximizing resources. How do they do that? Influence. How do they influence? First, you got to influence whom? Before you influence anybody else. To touch someone else, you must be touched. To move somebody else, you must be moved. How do you do that? Start by feeding your mind from now on. Feed it something strong, something alive. Consistently have a ritual that feeds your mind. Because if you let what's going on now buzzing in your pocket, on your computer screen, flashing on the television, we both know, all of us know, it's not going to empower you for the most part. That's not to say you shouldn't pay attention. You just can't make that the primary dietary input of your life, emotionally, psychologically, and financially. Do you agree with me on this? Yes or no? So find biographies, history, principles, solutions. Spend 95% of your time there. 5% keeps you updated on what other people are experiencing out there. Okay? 2, condition your body. The body affects the mind. 3, ask quality questions. I've given you a whole series here that you can ask to solve any problem. Remember, I don't have a problem. I only have a problem because I haven't found and formed the right question and demanded from myself the right answers or sought the answers. Whenever somebody comes to me and says, I got a problem with what you said, I'll say, that means you have a question about what I said. What's your question? See, as long as it's formed as a problem, there's no way to solve it. You can't solve a problem that somebody else owns, but you can answer a question. We could answer a question together, couldn't we? That's how you solve things. Form it as a question. Then I've given you 6 questions you can ask, and you can just get in the habit of these. Get them in your body, put them on a card, put them in your book, put them wherever it is you carry with you, your computer, your phone, and to glance at them after a while. Just go, okay, time to solve the problem. Look down, ask the question, ask the question, ask the question. Ideally, though, write down the answers. It'll be more powerful if you write it down by 5-fold. If for some reason you can't write it down, at least do it mentally. But demand the answer in a strong state and stack it. Now, you can also get other people to do it by creating a memo system or something like that. You can also do it by having a new discipline. In the company, there are no problems, there's just questions. So what's the question we've got to answer? Let's form the question effectively. Let's all work on the answer together. Now, another question you might have. You might ask yourself, well, how do you change somebody's state? Just ask the right question. If you ask some people, how's it going? Wrong question. Yeah, how's business for you? Is that a good question to ask most people right now? No. But if I were to ask you right now, all of you in this room, honestly and sincerely, tell me something. If you were to be honest about this, and you weren't, feigning that, you didn't want to look like you're being immodest. You're just being truthful. I bet there's some aspect of your life, something in your life, many things that you've done in your life over the course of your life that you're proud of. Or that you could be proud of if you just let yourself and didn't think it was improper to be proud. What's something in your life you're really proud of? Really proud of. That if you were to really stop and focus on it and take the time to appreciate it, make you feel damn proud. Proud of who you are, proud of someone in your life that you've touched or influenced, proud of something you've accomplished. That if you were to forget everything else and just really focus on this, you could feel damn proud right now. How many can think of something you could be really proud of? Let me see your hands. Say I. What about that are you proud of? What's it about that makes you feel proud? How does it feel when you're really proud? How do you feel right now when you're proud? Tell me something. If you really wanted to, what could you be excited about in your life right now? If you wanted to be excited, and I know you don't have to be, but if you really wanted to be excited, sincerely, and you wanted to be excited about your life, and you were just to focus on this, it would excite you. You'd be so excited about this aspect of your life, or this thing in your life. I mean, honestly, you could get worked up real quick. You start to think about it. What could you really be excited about in your life right now? How many can think of something you'd be excited about? Raise your hand. Say I. What about that excites you? Just say it out loud. What about that excites you? What else about that excites you? How does it feel when you're excited? How many feel different right now than just a few moments ago? What are you grateful for? If you wanted to be grateful right now, what could you feel grateful for? If you were really grateful, like you felt like you really reconnected to how lucky you are, that most of what you have in your life that you've worked your tail off for, truthfully, you could have worked just as hard growing up in Somalia and you'd have nothing. You might even be dead or damaged by a mine you stepped on. When you really realize the ultimate gift of even where you were born and who you were born around, or the environment, or even the time in history in which you were born, the moment we are in our life right now, or somebody in your life you're so grateful for. I mean, real gratitude, like almost overwhelming gratitude. To realize that your life has truly been blessed even though you've forgotten it at times. What could you feel blessed by? What could you feel grateful for? How many can think of something you're really grateful for, or someone you're really grateful for? How do you breathe when you're grateful? What's the look on your face when you're really grateful? What about that makes you feel so grateful? What about that makes you feel so grateful? How does it feel when you're grateful? Make a sound, whatever sound that would be of gratitude. Make the sound of gratitude. Just instinctively go. Who do you love? Who loves you? Who do you really love? Say no one. Do you have a dog? Does a dog love you? Get a dog. Don't get a cat. Cats are independent. Dogs you leave for 2 minutes like you've been gone for 6 months. You're so excited. Yeah. Who do you love? Who loves you? But what about that person do you love? What about you do they love? I have no clue. How does it feel when you're in love? With life, with a person? How many feel very different right now than a few moments ago? Raise your hand. And why? Why do you feel this way? Because whatever you focus on, you will feel, my friends. And if I want to give you a gift, the greatest gift I can give you is ask the right question. A question that will direct you. And notice I didn't tell you anything for the last 4 or 5 minutes. All I did was ask you questions. But how does it feel? And guess what? Everyone has questions. All you got to do is get a little curious again. Get curious. Get back into a state of wonder. You'll have all the questions you've ever wanted. How many questions can kids ask? Too many. Right? Get back in that state. So let me ask one more question and answer it, and I'll wrap up with this. Many of you have said, how do I influence people when I'm speaking from the front of the room? I've heard several people come up and say, how do I do an effective speech? Well, that's a nice question. Let me offer you an answer. Because the question is not so much what you're going to say. When I get up to speak, this is why time fluctuates with me. Often I'll have a plan, but the plan disappears because I go into a state, but I know the outcome. And so I rotate, move, change to what the outcome is to make sure I get to that outcome. And so I've made enough deposits in my mental, emotional bank account that I have lots of good things I can say. Lots. On lots of different areas. But what I need to see is what's needed. So I go in with overall what's needed, and then I find my way there, because along the way, I do have a format, though, that at least guides me. And the format will be helpful. I don't know what I'm going to say, but I know the format of what I'm going to say, and ironically enough, I'll make it another mixed metaphor. I'll use one you've already got. If I want to score, produce the result, which for me, I don't get up to give a speech ever. The only time I get up to speak, if I'm going to get up and speak in public, is for one purpose and one purpose only, to influence people to do something that makes the quality of their life and others better. That is my passion. I would be a crappy speaker speaking about wine. I just would be, because I don't know anything about wine and I'm not passionate about wine. But talking about something you're passionate about, anyone can be a great speaker about, because you don't have to think about what to say. It's in you. So I know what I'm about, but I do still have the intelligence to know there is a format if I'm going to do something effectively, which is to influence somebody. Anybody can get up and do a speech and get people to clap. The real question is, can you change the way somebody thinks? Can you shift what they feel? Can you get them to take some action? Can you get them to make a decision? Can you get them to move? To me, that's the criteria I'm looking for. So if you're looking for coaching on speaking, I'm the wrong guy, because I'm not a good speaker. In fact, I won Toastmasters gavel of greatest speaker of the decade, and I got up and I said, I don't deserve this, and I'm not feigning, like modesty here. I said, I can't get up and do a 10 or 30-minute talk like you guys. You're much more efficient and effective than I am, but I am not a speaker. I'm an influencer. I'm a communicator. And if you can get in your mind, don't have to be a speaker, all I got to do is communicate what I believe in, and then do this, what I'm about to show you. I'll give you a format to think about. I won't put it up on the screen, but I'll give you this. Imagine it's a mixed metaphor. I'm trying to get down the field to score a touchdown. Here, I'm just starting the game. Here is my touchdown. And the next metaphor is a funnel, where I'm going to get someone, where I'm going to influence them more and more until we finally get them where we want them to go, a place that's going to enhance their life. In your case, it's your product, your service, coming to work for your company, whatever. 40 yards of getting that touchdown, I call identification. ID, identification. It really, what I'm doing in this stage is getting people, and myself and other people, to connect. And the way I do that is I want someone to say, me too, not so what. Me too, not so what. So if I get up here, excuse me, and I start out, and I get up to speak, let's say it's the seminar is a perfect example, and I get up to talk, and I say, well, let me tell you all the things that I've achieved in my life. I've done this, and I've accomplished that, and I've made this happen, I've done that, and I've done this, and I've done that, and I've done this, and I've done that, and I've done this. What happens in people's head after just a short period of time? What's the first thing they're going to be saying? So what? So guess what? They're not in my funnel. They get in my funnel the minute I get them to say, me too, several times. So if you ever came to an event with me in the beginning portion, I'll say, look, I know you're here. I respect you. I'll think about it. It's different every time. I think about why people are there. I think about why I respect and love them. I think about what it is that is unique about my audience. I do my homework on my audience. And then when I go in there, I already have this affection for them before they walk in. I don't just think of you as a group. I think of these different personalities that are here that I'm here to serve. So I'm in state. And then the first thing I do is identify and connect with them by talking usually about some screw up or some problem. Or I'll say, you're all sitting here and, in the very beginning here, you might be wondering, what have I got myself into? I'll mind read. Or I'll say, you might be sitting there thinking, man, this guy's got big teeth. And you laugh and go, oh, he realizes he's a big dude with big teeth, Or I can remember when Diane Sawyer came to interview me when I was like 30 years old. And I had a lot of people that in the beginning, the media was all positive. I was this young, great guy. But if you don't change the story, the media will do it for you. Because they get bored telling the same story. So Madonna figured this out and keeps changing personalities for like 30 years. Because if she didn't do it, the media would do it to her, right? So bottom line is, I didn't understand this, and I finally got smart. And so Diane Sawyer sits down with me. Early in the conversation, I said to her, she said, so you're the most successful infomercials of all time. And I said, yeah. I said, it's embarrassing, isn't it? And she looked at me. She goes, you think it's embarrassing? I said, it's embarrassing. I'm between the Floppy Moth and the spray-on hair. I mean, oh my God. I said, how I'm able to reach anybody is a miracle. And she goes, you think they're stupid too? I said, of course I do. I said, you think I'd like to be on infomercials? But I said, look, I want to reach the world, and there was no platform for me. How would I do that? I'm not a preacher, and I don't want to be, and I didn't want to go just, do books. So I had to find another way to reach people. And these silly infomercials have got me in front of millions and millions of people. So I said, they're a pain, but they also have opened the door. She goes, wow, that's great. So as soon as she got to see he thinks it's stupid too, she and I bonded like that, identification. And then we bonded with 4 or 5 things. That was 40% of my influence of her. Was getting her to say, this guy's just like me. The person who comes and tries to impress everybody, it's not bad to have some things that are impressive also, but if you're too impressed with your own things, you're in trouble. Because people are going to say, so what? But if you can say, damn, I'm telling you this, and there's a phrase I use because I had to find a way to share it, but I said, I'm telling you this not because, I'm not trying to impress you, but it impresses me, and people laugh because they go, oh, he gets it. He gets it. What you can do in this area is I mind read. I'll be in an event I'll never forget, and these people are really pissed off and everything else, and I said, a lot of people here I know are probably thinking, what the hell is this white boy? It's an all African-American audience. What the hell is this white boy doing here lecturing us? And they couldn't believe I'd say that. He probably never played basketball in his life. I said, you'd be wrong. I did something for them to go, I like this guy. There's something about him that's like me. He's gutsy or he's crazy or, well, he's just a real guy. This is the majority of what you got to have to influence somebody if you're going to influence a group of people. Me too, not so what. Now, if that's 40 yards, 10 more yards get you halfway there. You know what the 10 yards is in influencing? It's logic and reason. Logic and reason, the firewalk, I do that seminar with somebody, the logic and reason, the seminar's 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, whatever the hell it really is. I don't know, I make it up in my head. It's probably more than what I think. But whatever number of hours, people are out of their mind at the end. But you know what? How much of that is the logic and reason how to walk the fire? 5 minutes. Maybe I take 20 minutes to explain it, but it's 5 minutes. I can explain it to you in 5. How to do it, what to do. But see, I got to influence you to do it. See, most of that is getting all the Me Too stuff so you can see, okay, it's not crazy. The logic and reason, how to do it, that's easy. Now I'm halfway there. Now I divide the rest of my talk into 2 parts. And that is the third section from the 50-yard line, 25 more yards in, you're almost there, you're 2/3 way across. This is called attack and confess. Attack and confess is this. If you're going to influence somebody, the best way to do it, very simply is, be in a position where whatever objection someone's going to have to what it is you're trying to influence them to do, you bring it up first. And you attack the problem. You attack the objection by confessing you've been guilty before. So for example, if I knew I was trying to influence somebody to, let's say, master time management in their life, I would say to them at this point, let me just tell you something. It's the most crazy thing in the world. Everybody knows that their time is the most valuable thing they have in their life, right? Everybody that I know wishes they had more time and knows that's not possible. Everybody you know has more to do than they have time for. Everybody knows that they need to get much better at managing their time. But when you try to offer them a tool on how to be able to manage their time, or a seminar or a coaching session, what do you think they say? I don't have the time. Is that the most stupid thing you've ever heard? I mean, think about this. What kind of idiot, and we've all done it at times. I've done this. I've told myself I don't have the time. I've told myself so much time. I've talked to myself so much about I don't have the time. The time I talked about it, I could have got it done. Who can relate to this here? Raise your hand and say aye. Do you agree with me on this, yes or no? Now, try to tell me you don't have time for this thing. You're dead. Because I attacked it. If you had said, Tony, I'd love to do it, but I don't have the time, and now I'm going after you, my attacking the objection will feel like I'm attacking you. But if I bring it up first, and I make how incredibly stupid it is, before you say anything, and you have to agree that it's stupid, I even maybe get you initiated by a question to tell me how stupid it is, and I confess, so you don't feel bad about yourself, that I've done this too, but I'm not stupid anymore, any more than you are. Guess what? There's no way you can come back now and tell me I don't have the time. So that's what I do. If it's money, you deal with money the same way, right? Who here in their life didn't have the money for something, but something inside of you wouldn't settle, and you effing found the way. You just were relentless and you found the way. How many have done this before? Say aye. Who here has ever told yourself you didn't have the money, and you didn't find the money, and you look back on it later, you know damn well if you just given away that belief system that it wasn't there, you would have found the way. Who's done this before? Say aye. Is the money always there for something we're committed to, yes or no? Who here absolutely knows that's true? Raise your hand. Okay, then none of us can give that excuse anymore. I can't either. Because if I do, I know I'm lying. And I'm not a liar. It wouldn't be lying to say it's difficult. Wouldn't be lying to say I don't know how I'm going to get the money. But to say I can't get the money is the biggest effing lie in the world. And what that does is what? What does it destroy? What does it destroy? Come on, guys. What does it destroy? Everything. Now try to tell me you don't have the money. So the secret is attack and confess. Now, if you just finish with that, it's not enough because that deals with the problem. But the last 24.9999 yards, right on inches from the goal, if this is attack and confess, this is like the hell if you don't. You got to paint the picture of the hell of what's going to happen if we don't follow through. And the last 24.999 yards, almost 25 yards, is the solution. This is the heaven if you do. This is if you follow through, if you make this thing happen, if you do the things we've talked about here, let me tell you what's going to happen. You know, I putzed around all this time, or I could come back to this one and I could tell you about John. John put this off. I met him. I told him all this. If he was here today, let me tell you what he would do. I confess for John. John would say to you, don't stop. Don't hold out. Are you crazy? The one thing in your life that's valuable is time. Can you really afford to not implement this? Can you really afford to put this off? You know damn well you can't. And he did for 3 years. And he got divorced, and he did this, and he did that. And I tell you a real story, true story. And your brain's going, hell, hell, hell if I don't, hell if I don't, hell if I don't. But now I got to move into heaven if I do. But let me tell you what. Let me tell you about John who did do it. Or let me tell you what finally happened 3 years later when he finally did. He owned himself. He stopped making excuses. He looked the tiger in the eye. He stepped up and reclaimed everything inside of himself. He felt free again. He just decided, I'm not going to dabble in this crap. I'm going to master it. I'm going to do what's necessary, and it's not that difficult. And he just did one step a day, one step. Next day, another step. Next day, another step. 3 months later, let me tell you where he was. A year later, what time was? It's been 3 years. Can I tell you what his life's like now? Here's what his relationship's like. Here's what his finances are like. This is what his joy is like. This is where his life is today because he followed through. And then the last inches to go. If you do all this and you don't do the last piece, it's over. And that is, you got to ask for the action. Influence is about asking for the action. If you do everything else, but you don't say, okay, John, let's go, and assume the sale. Okay, John, are you in or you out? Or whatever your is, you must ask for action as the final component. If you don't ask for action, nothing's going to occur. If at any stage here I step out of this sequence, I'm going to be in trouble. If I start at the very beginning trying to tell you the hell if you don't do this, are you going to listen to me? You just met me and I tell you, guess what? Your entire life's going down the hole if you don't do X, Y, and Z. Are you going to be influenced by me? Yes or no? Yes or no? No. We need 40 yards of connection, relationship, identification, me too, not so what. It's not just relationship. Here's why it really works. Logic is clean. I need enough reasons that if I don't do it, I got enough pain, and then enough solution and a call to action. This is how I would design your communication of your sales presentation. This is how I design your speech. This is how I design your interaction on something you're going to develop as a core story. In a core story, what do you want people to say in the very beginning? Me too. They need some logic and reason. They need some pain, and they need some pleasure, and they need a call to action. And every good core story has that if you listen to it. And it's in that sequence. Because if I said the dog bit Johnny versus Johnny bit the dog, same elements, but is it the same experience? Not if you're Johnny. Right? So the sequence plays a role. Is this helpful? So you can always say, I'm gonna go communicate a message. First I gotta connect sincerely. I gotta be able to have people say me too, not so what. What do we have in common? What can I show where I've screwed up and where I've done well, but how do I get people to identify with me and how do I identify with them? What's the logic and reason? What's the story I'm telling that's sincere and real, but it attacks the problem, it attacks the objection, it attacks the limitation, it attacks the restraint before they bring it up. If you wait till they bring it up, now you're attacking them. How do I attack it? Confess I've been guilty or sincerely confess for someone else. Always be accurate, don't BS. Then I paint the solution, and then I call for action. Okay? So how many have seen my TED Talk? Okay? So I did this talk. This man, I go to meet him, and I didn't want to come for an 18-minute talk, but I came because some friends said, please come, do this. So I'm doing it as a gift. And I go up, and he's going to meet him. I said, I understand that, you own TED now. And he says, yes, oh, you're Tony Robbins. This is how our relationship started with Chris. I said, yes. He goes, oh, you're that motivator? I said, yes, actually I am, but that's not how I look at myself. I said, you could call me that. I said, actually, I'm more of a coach, and if I inspire people as a part of that, that's nice, but that's not the essence. I'm more a strategist. But he wasn't listening, so I just shut up. I wasn't wasting my breath. He decided who I was. So I said, listen, I'm just really grateful to be here, and I'm looking forward to doing a good job for you. He says, make sure you don't do that jumping thing with people. I said, okay, great. Don't change the physiology too. Great. 18 minutes, don't change the physiology. Okay, great. And then he said, well, he introduced me. They had somebody on right before, and the energy in the room was through the floor because the person was talking about something complex, and, it was difficult. It wasn't a bad speaker, just you don't teach string theory in 18 minutes. It was something like that. And he gets up and he goes, well, the energy was really there. He goes, well, now we have Mr. Motivator, Anthony Robbins. That's how he introduced me. We'll see what he can do now, won't we? Right? Right? That's my introduction. And then he wanted to say, he had a very publicized divorce years ago. I've been married for 10 years since that time, right? And my divorce was not a negative thing. He's highly publicized. I've never seen any place. He must have done some research on the internet. That was my introduction. Here he is, Tony Robbins. So what do? Part of me is pissed off, wanting to say, what the F are you talking about? And I came here to give a gift. I'm here to try to serve, and this is how you're going to introduce me? But, people get their little things. Chris and I are really good friends now. But, he had his impression, right? So, I got up and I made some joke about, first thing I said, wow, you must do really good research because I didn't see any publicity of my divorce, but I guess, you've done some homework on that, right? And I just kind of acknowledged it, is all I did. I said, but I will tell you my former spouse is very happy. And by the way, you won't see that in TED Talk because they cut the introduction, all those pieces, because it would have been embarrassing. It was terrible the way it was introduced. But then I got up and I said, listen, I got 18 minutes. Can I just tell you something? The shortest seminar I do is 50 hours, 50. And her eyes got this big. And I said, I'll tell you why. I'm not into just inspiring people and then they go back down. I am not Mr. Motivator. I am not the guy that says, go to your garden and say, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds. You know, I'm here to show you what the weed is so you and I can be smart and figure out what to do and take it out. I'm into something that's a practical solution. What are people starting to say in the audience? Oh, me too. You know, I'm not some big pumped up motivator like this guy. He's not that either. Maybe he's not like that. He said, by the way, in 18 minutes, there's no way in hell I'm going to do those for you. So I said, all of you are leaders. I came here to serve. I didn't come here for money. I didn't come here for fame and fortune. I have a little bit of that, fortunately, in my life, and I kind of teased. I said, at least my teeth, and I made fun of myself or something. And then I just said, look, you're all welcome to come to one of my events, and I've also got some tapes here. I'm going to give them to all of you because I know you will influence other people. I was just totally sincere, and I tried to give, and they got I was here to give and not to take, and it changed the identification immediately. And people started, still wasn't there. Then how did I do it? I went, okay, I only got a few minutes. I got to grab them, so I got to bring everybody together so everybody connects. And I said, it's the first time I ever did it, who here has ever failed before? I did it spontaneously. I had no plan. I didn't have my little triangle out. I had a different triangle. The triangle changes once I stand in the room, but I know the overall feel. And so nobody raised their hand. That's not working too well. But I don't give up. Just like these are pig-headed discipline would be the word that Chet would use for it. For me, it's relentlessness. It's passion. And I asked the question again. I said, thanks for your full participation. And a little chat. Who here has ever failed? I keep going until I get everybody in their hand. So from then on, by the way, where did I end? I did Logic and Reason. And my Attack and Confess, I told the story about me at 9/11 and with people. And in the middle of the story, right when the solution was there, my time was up. And they had been taking people, they literally walk up to people as you're finishing at that 18 minutes, you know, the President of the United States, and they interrupted him. So I looked down, and everybody was in a trance from me telling the story, and even he had not realized I was over. And I was 2 minutes over, which to them would be like 20 years or 2 days, right? And so right at that moment, I looked at my watch. At the peak of the story, I'm telling a story about this man. It's 9/11. This man gets up and says to this woman whose husband just died in the tower, I'd like to cry for you. I'd like to feel sorry for you. But frankly, I'm a Muslim, so I have to say to you, it's retribution. It was on the day of 9/11. And the room's like, and I said, and I had to intervene right then and there. And then I looked down and I went, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I said, I'm 3 minutes over my time. I do not want to be disrespectful. I'm so sorry. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. And I walked off in the middle of the story, right? And what do you think happened? People were like, oh! People started laughing, screaming, and, you know, and so he had to invite me back. Okay, I'm sorry. You know? And so I finished with the solution very respectfully in the next 4 or 5 minutes, right? And I had the longest TED Talk they've ever had in history, but people were very happy. And at the end, my call to action, which is why I really went there, was study the internal map. Become a student of the internal web, the thing that connects you. Don't just think of the external web. What influences human beings, you must master. If you can become a master of influence, and you can influence yourself, if you can understand what's really driving other people, if you can get inside their heads, if you can understand their blueprint of life and find a way to meet their needs, you cannot just meet your own needs, you can change the world. And people got it. And I left, and I'm going to do the same thing right now because I've gone way over my time. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Hi, it's Tony Robbins again. Welcome to Invincible Leadership, the secret to explosive growth. Another big promise, isn't it? But ultimately, let's talk about this for a moment. We've said that Peter Drucker, one of the greatest business experts in history, a guy who could really help turn around and grow businesses, believed that all business really is this concept of innovation and marketing. That the more strategic you get about how to add value to your customer, to do more for them than anybody's doing, that's the ultimate competitive advantage. But only if you can also market. All this stuff, those got to be managed, right? Somebody's got to lead it. I mean, when you see a business and it's been around for decades and all of a sudden it starts to go down, what's changed? Well, for decades, economies went up and down. For that business to go down, what's changed is the leadership. In my experience of working with literally hundreds of thousands of business leaders, as well as millions of people, and God only knows how many companies over the last 30 years, the one thing I've seen is If you have the right product, but you got the wrong people, people that really don't understand how to meet customers' needs, people that have gotten used to doing things the same way and they got bad habits, people that aren't hungry and driven, and if you don't make a shift with those people, you can take the best product and you can destroy that company with the wrong leader. On the other hand, I've seen over and over again companies where they had a terrible product, but they got the right leader or the right leadership team, and they found a way to make it work and to be it successful because they can adapt it. Leadership is the ultimate advantage. Now, who's a leader? Every single person in the company can lead. They can lead a division. They can lead change. They can lead progress. But ultimately, if you're watching this, whatever division or part of this company you're in, whether you're a small company just getting started, a middle-sized company, or a really large corporation, something that's been around and doing hundreds of millions or billions of dollars a year, individuals are how companies change. They change when those individuals find a way to add more value. Think about it. What creates a breakthrough in a company where suddenly that value is found, a new way to meet customers' needs? What creates a new marketing breakthrough? What causes someone who's been selling a certain way and all of a sudden they start reaching everybody? That breakthrough always starts with a change in psychology, a change in a person's beliefs, a change in their emotion. You know, they were locked into a mindset of this is how you do it, and it got old and stale. And one day they started to innovate. Or one day they said, you know what? The economy does suck, but you know what? It's not going to suck for us. You know, I've interviewed some of the top business leaders, managers, innovators, turnaround experts, salespeople. I remember one time years ago, I met this woman named Marty Rodriguez. She was at the time a woman who'd gotten in sales. She came to one of my sales seminars. I used to do these one-day programs of total immersion about how to get the economic edge, how to have the edge of influence. And I saw her for, I don't know, maybe it was the 8th time she'd been to the same seminar, sitting in the front row, taking notes like crazy. And I finally went up to her because I found out she was the #1 salesperson for Century 21 in the world. In the world. She was at the time selling more products, more houses per day than most people would ever dream of and doing in months. At one stage, she was selling more homes than the entire multiple listing service in the city she lived in Glendora, California. I mean, this woman, I watched her do well in good times and horrific times. In good times, everybody joined and she still outdid them. In bad times, everybody quit. All the mortgage brokers, all the realtors, and she had this open market to get more of her brand ownership. And when I talked to her, I said, what are you doing at this seminar? I mean, you've been to this thing, what, 8, 9, 10 times, 7 times? How many? She said, I've been here more than a dozen. I said, you're in the front row for 12 hours taking notes like crazy. I mean, you sell an average of 1 home a day? She said, yeah. I said, then you're losing a sale today. I said, I'm not trying to talk you out of it, but why are you here? Because underneath it all, I thought I knew the answer, but I wanted her to say it. She said, Tony, I could go out today and sell. I could go out and just do my business and do better than most people. But how do you think I got to be #1 in the world? My entire focus is creating breakthroughs, Tony. You know this. She said, I can keep doing what I'm doing, or I can come here and I can hear something. And even if it was the same thing I've heard so many things that I'm not applying. You say it yourself, Tony. Repetition is the mother of skill. If I hear something the first time, I might start to understand it intellectually. And that's the mistake you hear from most people, right? Oh, I know this. If you're not doing it, you don't know it. Don't lie to yourself. If you're not getting the result, you're not applying it, you have intellectual understanding. And intellectual mastery, you know, that's helpful. It's a first step. But understanding something cognitively and thoroughly saying you know it intellectually, that and $3 will almost get you a Starbucks. You got to have more than intellectual understanding. It's got to become emotional. And that's what she said. I get in this environment with these people, total immersion, and the emotion hits me. And she says, I hear the stuff again, the repetition, I get it in my body, and now I start to follow through. Repetition is the mother of skill, but you can't just think it, you got to feel it. Where were you on 9/11? I bet you can remember vividly where you were, because you didn't just have information, you had information that emotion was attached to it. Where were you on 7/11 of the same year? I bet most people can't remember unless something really emotional happened that day, your birthday, a breakthrough, whatever the case may be. The point of the matter is, you got to go from intellectual and emotional mastery to doing it enough that it gets in your body. That's what we want to do in this program. We want to introduce you to some concepts, get you started on this path, and get it in your body so you actually follow through. So the sales tool or the negotiation tool or the way to get the meeting or the way to manage your time or the way to grow your business, it starts to get inside you. That's what masters do. Breakthroughs, again, are breakthroughs in psychology, they're breakthroughs in emotion, because that's what changes your actions. How often have you known what to do and not followed through? Let's take a little time, just this one. Pretend you're in a seminar. Put yourself into it. Here's what we're going to do. Before we start the actual, quote, seminar, the way we start out live is we have everybody sit down first, and I want you to do this now. I want you to make up your wish list, your action list. Every change you would ideally like to make in your business, every improvement, every transformation, anything you'd like to master. And I mean anything. It could be something related to sales, marketing, management, time management, some way to change the culture, some way to influence people, how to turn your team around, how to turn yourself around. I want you to write down any challenges you have in the business, any problems that need to be solved, any goals you want to achieve, and specific things that need to be changed. Make a list, write down any changes in this business that need to happen, any improvements, any problems that need to be solved. That's your ideal wish list. And here's what I can promise you. With the experts we have, the answers are there. So this is just the setup. Write down your list. Don't just jump in there so you know why you're doing this. What are you looking for? What's your outcome? What do you want to change? And then why do you want to change it? Why is it so important? If you made those changes in your business together, what would it mean? What would it mean financially? What would each one mean? Put a number on it. So what do you want to change? What do you want to improve? If we made the change, what would it be worth to us physically, emotionally, financially for this company?
Let me just give you 5 quick items to make sure that you get the maximum result. Real simple. I'm going to do it real quick because we got to finish. The difference in people, the difference in performance, the difference in the final result, the outcome. Is it usually dependent upon skill? Is that what makes one person better than another? Yes or no? How many have seen someone with an unbelievable innate skill get wiped out by an athlete, a person, a business individual who clearly had less skill? How many have seen this happen? Say aye. It's our ability to maximize. We said on day 1, leaders are what transform organizations. You want to grow this company, you want to transform this company, leaders do it. A leader doesn't mean everybody else follows you. It just means that you have a higher what? A higher standard than anybody else does. What'll make you the leader is when you have a higher expectation, not of other people. Anybody can do that. Of whom? Of yourself. So if you want to know what does it take to take things to the highest level, what's going to take to change my business permanently, not temporary, you can go home and you can install some of these strategies, skills, tactics, tools, insights, and see a significant change. But if that change is going to be a lasting company of value that keeps growing, then the things you've learned here have to become the standard for your organization, not something you did for a period of time. Whenever you look at somebody and say, why are they more successful than anybody else? It's always because of step 1, they've raised their standard. If you go back home and you want to change your life in any way, personally, professionally, or your company, as boring as it sounds, as stupid as it ain't it sounds, you might say, I spent all this time, this energy, this money, and you're going to tell me to raise my standards? Yes. Because even though that's not sexy, it is the only thing that creates lasting change. You can go on a diet and you can lose weight, but what will that person eventually do? They'll go where? Back, unless they raise their standard. Now that sounds so trite and stupid and positive thinky or old school, but the truth is it's the truth. So maybe I can language it in a way that's more compelling to you or more simple. What does it mean when we say raise our standards? It means you turn your shoulds into musts. The difference in people is that they turn their shoulds into musts. The things that you used to say I should do, you do your shoulds when it's convenient, when it's comfortable, when it goes your way. But when something is a must, not to other people, but a must to you, do you find the way to get it done, yes or no? Yes. So The difference in people is what's their must, or another word for that is what's their standard. Every person in this room right now, our bodies are a reflection of our physical standards. They are not a reflection of our desires. Most people have a desire for more energy or a better body or a stronger body or a more fit body. We don't get our goals, we get our musts. The ones that are the musts become how you are. And guess what? It shows up in your rituals. When it's a must, you have different rituals, different things you do consistently when you must have your body a certain way than you should or you'd like to or you want to. How many follow what I'm talking about here? Say I. So whether we want it or not, the only way to change your body long term is change what the must is for you. Now, I'm not telling you what it should be. Who the hell am I? I'm just saying maybe it's time for you to take a look. Because many times you set the standard a long time ago, or you lost the standard completely because most of us base our standards by our environment. Who you spend time with is who you tend to become. So if everybody around you is gaining a little weight, or everybody around you is, constantly tired, after a while, even if you had high energy, you don't want to make fun of them or tease them or make them feel bad. So gradually, subconsciously, you lower your own standard just a little bit. And that little bit is that old metaphor, overused but true. You take a frog and put them in boiling water, what's it going to do? Jump right out. But if you put them in and turn the water up real slowly, over time, it'll boil to death. That's most people's lives, isn't it? And it's usually because you haven't remembered the power of who you spend time with. Who you spend time with is who you become. So one of the things that's great about this 5 days is you found people from all over the world who are all absolutely committed to go day and night and day, literally, sometimes with food, sometimes without, but whose standard was, I'm here to maximize who I am, what I'm about, what I'm going to take home, what I'm going to create. That raises your game. Remember, play against somebody you're better than, your skills are going to go down. Play against somebody better than you, just to stay on the court, the game has to go up. Want to change your life? Raise your standard. Want to raise your standard the most? Get around where it's better. Surround yourself with people playing the game much higher than you are. So just to be around them, your game has to rise. That's part of what we try to do. When we come into a company, we create that by raising the standard amongst them. Or you got to do it by yourself, but you got to do it. How many agree with me on this? Say I. And it starts with whom? It starts with us. So raise the standard. I remember when I met Michael Jordan for the first time, and it was while he was still with the Bulls. And I asked him, I got a chance to do some coaching a bunch of people, and I think I introduced him because of this. And I said, Michael, I said, how is it you do this? I mean, you're the best that's ever lived at this stage. Got to ask the same question of Wayne Gretzky. And interesting, Wayne Gretzky, I'd read someplace and he gave me the same answer. I asked him the same thing. You're not the fastest. You're not the strongest. You're not, how is it you're the great one when you're not the fastest, the strongest, the quickest? And he said, well, Tony, I appreciate the compliment, but he said, I think one of my advantages is most people skate to where the puck is, and I skate to where the puck is going. The power of what? Anticipation. He knows the pattern. With Jordan, his standard was, I asked him, he said, Tony, everybody, I said, what makes you the best? Is it natural ability? Is it talent? Is it skill? Is it God-given? Is it strategy? What is it? He said, Tony, I think I can say this to you without it sounding like hyperbole. He said, I have got unbelievable natural skills. But he said, study my history and you'll know why I am who I am. I did not make the high school varsity team when I was a sophomore in school. High school, I got cut. He said, I had a lot of natural talent, but the greatest gift of my life was a coach who said, you're not on the team. And I looked at him, I laughed at him. I said, you got to put me on the team. I'm the most talented guy out there. He said, no, you're not. He said, you have a lot of natural talent, but you have no heart, no absolute commitment, no real drive. You're not on my team. And it just crushed him. And finally he negotiated and he said, look, you want to be on my team next year? Simple. Meet me every morning before school for a one-on-one practice, and I'll take this raw talent and I'll teach you discipline. I'll show you how to raise your standard. And if you show up the whole year, I'll guarantee you a spot next year. And if you don't, probably the same outcome's going to happen when you try out next year. He couldn't believe it. And guess what? Most people don't know. Michael Jordan got up every morning and drilled and drilled and drilled and didn't get to be on the team. And next year he was on the team, and he was not only good, he was great. Guess when his career exploded? When he lost again the championship to Detroit. And he was on the bus. He said he was crying in the back of the bus, physically crying, pissed off at all the other players that they hadn't done their job. And something inside of him snapped and realized, Crying, whining, blaming everybody else is not the problem. I need to raise my, because he realized that's what did it for him originally. And you know what he did that year? He lifted weights like never in his entire life. He decided he was going to dominate every person, every floor, every place, every spot in the country. He's going to be stronger than anybody. He practiced like he'd never practiced in his life. And oh, by the way, he won how many NBA championships? How many in a row? 3. Retired, came back and won how many in a row? 3. Never anybody in history would even dream of such a thing, especially after retirement. That's the power of raising your standard. But guess who he competes with? Michael told me one time, he goes, Tony, if I competed with other people, I wouldn't be who I am. He said, my competition is with the best I can be. They're trying to compete with me. That's why I beat them. Because they're competing with where I am. But I'm competing with where I can be. Think about that mindset. Think how your life would be different if you raised the standard of what you expected from yourself, not your people, yourself, to that level. How things could shift. It's all about changing your shoulds to musts. It's all about going back and saying, this is how it's going to be. It's like when Gary Vee was here and he was guys were saying, man, I'm working so hard, man. I work from 9 to 6. He goes, yeah, what are you doing from 8 to 2? 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. That's when you master your craft. I always say to people, it's what you practice in private that you'll be rewarded for in public. People say, oh my God, you have this great ability, this great skill. They didn't see all the hours. This class, this course, I know tons of the stuff like the back of my hand. But if you talk to my team who's exhausted, they'll tell you we're up to 4 a.m. almost every night. To be able to figure out how to provide for you a life cycle and think about Nike and give you accurate information about when did they really get to young adult, when they fall down. We had to make phone calls, read financials, do all kinds of stuff. We did all that stuff. We were doing all these things, and we accomplished so much, and I figured out how to make it even better. That level of commitment is what makes you great at what you do and gives you that little edge that makes you stand out from everybody else. And that standing out is what makes somebody absolutely own an industry or brand themselves like nobody else in the world. That process is what this is about. Raise your standard. When you got to go home, you got to say, where are we going to raise the standard? What am I going to take that's been my should and make it absolute must? Where are we going to do that as a team and how are we going to pull it off? Now, who here has ever, by the way, your income right now is a result of your standards as well. It's not the industry and it's not the economy. Who here is making more money today than you made 10 years ago? Let me see your hands. How many feel like it's not enough today? Let me see your hands. And how could that be? Real estate's so cheap now. Computers are cheaper than they were then. You get so much more for your money. Because once you achieve a level, who knows what happens? You close the gap, you create a new gap. That's because that's what makes us grow. Who's willing to go back to where you were 10 years ago? Not many. Some of you would be because it's gotten worse in the last 10 years for you. But the majority, there's no way. See, once you're fortunate enough, if you don't like cleaning house, once you're fortunate enough to have somebody clean your toilets, you will not be doing that again. Unless you like that. You'll find somebody who loves cleaning toilets and you will pay them handsomely. Because now to go back and do that, once you've had the privilege of not having to do that, it's a different game. It's a gross metaphor, but who gets what I'm talking about here? Say I. Once you have a must, you find a way to get to it. Every one of you in this room is earning what you must earn, not a dime more. Don't get me wrong, you might have big goals, big desires, but it's not a must for you. Because even when the economy crunches, if it's a must, you will find the way. How many agree with me on this? Say I. See, when it was a must for me to get at one level, I did. I remember it was a must for me to finally make $1 million a year. I had my son Jarek going to be born. I swore I would never have a child unless I was financially set, and I wasn't financially set, and he was on his way. I went from $38,000 a year to making $1 million a year in the next 12 months. That was all BS. In my head, I thought all my growing up, all the pain was because my parents fought because there was no money. They would have fought anyway. Because I believed that, though. I raised the standard, made it happen. And then I made $1 million a year for 7 straight years. Even though I built 5 more companies, even though I was helping more people, I made the same amount of money. Guess why? That was my must. At some level above that, seemed greedy. Now, it wasn't like I had this incredible lifestyle. I owned a magical home. I had this place called the Del Mar Castle overlooking the ocean in Del Mar, California. But I was on the road, staying at the Ramada Inn in Milwaukee with shag carpeting and smelly, dead animals on the wall on my birthday. And my maid, she's back at home in the castle going, oh, Mr. Robbins, happy birthday. Oh, I can't help thanking you. It's so wonderful. Oh, Mr. Robbins, it's so beautiful here. I was sitting out in the jacuzzi overlooking the ocean. Oh, yes. Oh, I've lost 22 pounds. I can't tell you. It's been so amazing. I get on your Stairmaster and I watch Oprah. I love your gym, Mr. Robbins. And I'm thinking, she's got a multi-million-dollar lifestyle. How many can relate to this in some way, right? So I went from 38,000 to $1 million, so I changed my income. It became an absolute what? It was nothing about money. It was about growing. Because I knew to make more, I'd have to help more people. I'd have to expand. And I came with this goal. I wanted to feed all the people in San Diego that were homeless. First, my goal was a third of the homeless people. And then my goal was everybody. I said, if I can go from 38,000 to $1 million, I should be able to go from $1 million to $3 million in 3 years. And I did it in 12 months. I found the why. I found the reasons. I got a different RPM. But it became a must for me, not a should. You're meeting your must, my friends. Maybe it's time to change your must. Some people's must is to survive. Some people's must is to be okay. Some people's must is to have freedom. Some people's must is to have more than they could possibly spend. Some people's must is take care of everybody around them. Whatever your must is, you're going to get it. When you leave here, get clear on your must. Or raise your what? Step 2, real fast. I'm going to do it real fast. Who here's ever raised the standard and you get out there and you go, I'm going to go do this, and I'm committed. I'm going to change this. I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to lose 50 pounds. I'm going to take my company to the next level. And you're all excited. And then all of a sudden this voice in your head goes, who are you kidding? Who's ever had one of these? Raise your hand and say, I. So once you raise your standard, you got to get certainty behind it. You can sustain it. And that means you got to change your limiting beliefs. You got to change your limiting beliefs. And who has limiting beliefs, by the way? Who? Everyone does. So you got to become aware of it and you got to destroy it. Now, how to do that? Honestly, if you've been to the EBW, you know how. If you haven't, come join me in San Jose or someplace else. And who has limiting beliefs, by the way? Who? Everyone does. So you got to become aware of it and you got to destroy it. Now, how to do that? Honestly, if you've been to the EBW, you know how. If you haven't, come join me in San Jose or someplace else and come through the experience. When you change your limiting belief, everything changes. Because as you believe, so is it done unto you. If you believe you're right, or you believe you're wrong, you're right. Because whatever you're certain about, you find a way to support it. I always teach people to exercise. Try this. And if you know it, do it fresh. Look in this room real fast for everything that's brown in this room. I'm going to give you a test. What's brown? Quick. Look for brown. Look for brown. Look for brown. Brown hair, brown clothing, brown. Close your eyes. Tell me everything you saw in this room that's red. Raise your hand if you see more brown in your head than red and say, I. Open your eyes. Now look for red. 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 Look everywhere for red. Look for red. Raise your hand if you found more red this time. Raise your hand and say, I. Why? Because you're looking for it. Because whatever you focus on, you'll find. In fact, you'll find stuff that's not there. How many saw beige, called it brown just to feel successful? How many saw burgundy, called it red just to feel successful? See, once you believe something is a certain way, out of your need for certainty, you'll change things to meet that belief. Let me show you in 2 seconds flat why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. I call it the success cycle. Real fast. Draw yourself 4 squares, put them up on the screen here. You'll see, as I do this, take a quick look. You'll notice you've got the word potential up in the left-hand square. Up in the right-hand square is the word action. Bottom right is the word results. Bottom left is the word belief, or another word for that would be a sense of certainty. Potential, action, belief, results. And notice there's arrows in a clockwise fashion where they just keep feeding each other over and over and over again. So again, it's potential, action, results, belief, or another word for that would be certainty. Now, do you ever notice how rich people tend to get richer and poor people to get poorer? And I don't just mean rich in financial terms. I mean people that are rich emotionally. Do you ever notice how happy people tend to get happier? And depressed people tend to get more depressed? How many found this to be true? Say I. It's because the power of momentum and what I'm about to show you. So let me show you something here. What's the potential of any human being? You tell me, quick. Unlimited. Do most people's results reflect that true potential? Yes or no? No way. Why? Because most people aren't taking enough what? But is it possible to take a lot of action and still get lousy results? What if you got a salesman that works for you and they walk out and they knock on 100 doors and they say, you wouldn't want to buy anything from me, would you? Or they don't say that verbally, but they say it non-verbally. Is that going to affect their results? Yes or no? So it's not enough even to take enough action, because when we believe it's not going to work or we're uncertain, does that affect how much of our potential we tap? Yes or no? See, if you don't think it's going to work, you're not going to put out a bunch of your energy when you think it's going to fail. And by the way, when you're not sure, you tap little potential. Do you take little or a lot of action? When you're not sure, when you think it's not going to work, you take massive action or little action? Now, when you take little potential with little action, what kind of results do you get? Little lousy results. And when you get lousy results, what does that do to your belief? You go, see, I told you it wasn't going to work. Told you it was a waste of time. And then, by the way, when you have less belief, how much more potential do you take? More or less? If it's possible, you tap less potential, more or less action. Less. And what happens to your results? They get even what? And now they got worse results. What does that do to your belief? And by the way, now you see the current economy. Isn't it true? Everybody out there is going, oh my God, the results are so bad, it's going to get worse in the future, so I better pull in my horns, there's less potential, so I'm not going to push as hard. I'm not going to take much action. Oh my God, I'm getting lousy results with little potential action. Oh my God, it's going to get worse. That's what creates a recession, depression, whatever you want to call it. How do you change that? By the way, can it work the opposite direction? What would happen if something inside you gave you so much certainty inside of you that you felt absolutely certain that recession was your friend, that the worst economy for you was the greatest time on earth, that all you had to do was manage your state and apply your fundamentals and immerse, stay coached so you don't get off the target, keep taking action, and you could own your business and you go to other people's businesses? How many believe that, by the way? Now say I. When you have that kind of certainty, are you going to use more of your potential when you go home or less? Which one, my friends? Are you going to take less or more action? When you are certain and you use lots of your potential with massive action, what kind of results do you get? Massive action gets massive results. What kind of belief do you get now when you get better results? You go home, you use your core story. You go home and you take one of these techniques, you get a different response. You go home and you stimulate a new source of profit or income. You go home and you add a service. You go home and do anything. And it works. Your brain goes, yeah, it works. Now, by the way, at Home X, we went in there. Thank God we went in there, because they took our stuff and it looked like it wasn't working. Do you remember that? Yes. Because some people there didn't want the change to happen. So we had to dig in and find out it was working. We knew you can't take action. You can't sow that seed and reap nothing. So we uncovered what was really going on. You're going to have to watch for the same thing, depending upon the size of your organization. But bottom line, when you get great results, belief gets stronger. Now you're totally certain. Are you going to use more or less potential, my friends? Which one? More. You're going to take even more what? Going to even greater what? Even more certainty. And now what happens to your business? Boom, 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 boom. And now you have a different momentum. And so your economy does not have to reflect the economy. You get to create your economy. You get to decide whether you freeze to death or ski or snowboard. It's winter, but you can have the best time of your life. It could be a sunny, beautiful, magical time. But what you got to do is you got to manage this process. In order to do it, you got to change your limiting beliefs. And this week has been about doing that by giving you so many tools and examples that you'd be immersed. But I promise you, when you go home, all this is going to be tested. A, because all the stuff that's waiting for you after being gone for 5 days. B, all the people there you work with, their limiting beliefs, whether you have one employee or two because you're an army of 1 or 2 people, or whether you got 10,000. And so you have to be able to implement. This, by the way, is, I'm not here to sell you, bring us in if we can help. Do you think we could help? Yes or no? Yes or no? Bring us in, we'll do it. Or get your team together and find a way to make sure this momentum goes in the right direction. Make sense? This is the must. If you have this high standard, but you don't really believe because the momentum's in the wrong direction, having the tools will be worthless. That's where certainty, that's where everything else we teach, that's what I do in my events, that's where you guys have been there before, that's what you got to bring to the table. What are the 5 keys for integrating this? Number 1, you got to go home and raise your what? Come on, guys, raise your what? Which means turn your shoulds into. Step number 2, you got to go out and change your limiting what? Find anything that's limiting you and destroy it. What's the fastest way to destroy it? You can do it very quickly by producing the results in your mind over and over again. Or, why do you think I get people to walk on fire? Because because they think it's impossible. When they walk in this fire, mentally you might say, oh, I can do it. But when they get in front of that fire and it's 2,000 degrees burning hot coals, it gets their full attention. And suddenly they have a state change. And when you get yourself in a state where you can storm through fire, it's not about fire walking. The state you're in to get yourself to walk across fire is the metaphor for anything that used to stop you, the fire of your life. And by the way, when you cross fire and you're on the other side doing something you once thought was difficult or impossible, it's that easy, your brain goes, what else can I do that I thought was impossible? It's unbelievable. It's not intellectual, it's emotional. Plus, after fire walking, cold calling is not a problem. You get the idea, ladies and gentlemen? All right? So what we're really talking about here is changing your beliefs. Now, here's the third key. If you're going to get maximum results, you got to model what works. We brought you for 5 days and nights here, models of what works. Go back and get them. Now, here's where the challenge is. How many got tons to do in your normal list of things to do when you go home? How many got a lot to do? Say aye. How many have a lot of outcomes you got to go after? Say aye. How many have the same amount of time you had before? Say aye. So in your business, if you need something to get done, you get it done because it's an absolute what? Or you hire someone to get it done. Hire us, hire someone else, get somebody inside. But are these things you're going home with musts or shoulds? Which one? Do whatever it takes. You say, I don't have the money. You don't have the money not to. Forget us. Hire somebody as an individual who knows what they're doing and put them in there. Leverage yourself. The only way you're going to get the game bigger is by taking a little bit of what, my friends? Risk. But that means get yourself some resources. Be resourceful enough to get the resources. What's great about this? What is this opening? What is this creating? What's possible? What have I not seen? This is going to make me see. What have I learned from this? What can I learn from this? What am I willing to do to still have it the way I want it? That's the fourth step. You intensify, and you innovate. And then there's the final fifth step. And that fifth step's really simple, my friends. And that is step up and give. Step up and give more than anyone else could possibly expect. The ultimate transformation happens when you stop trying to get and you start to give. Whenever you're at your best, you're giving. I remember so vividly driving in my car, my Volkswagen Bug, and I was struggling, and I was 19 years old. I was driving on a freeway in San Gabriel Valley, the 210 freeway, I'll never forget. And it's midnight, and I'm frustrated, and I felt like I tried everything, and I had these big hits, like the one you just saw, and nothing was going my way, and I was frustrated, and I kept thinking, how come I'm not getting what I want? And all of a sudden, it just hit me on the freeway. I pulled over the side, it was almost midnight, no cars really around, grabbed my journal, and I wrote, and I still have the journal to this day from when I was 19 years old, full page, and I wrote, the secret to living is giving. And I realized why I wasn't doing well. Because I all focused about what I wasn't getting. I was not focused on what I was not giving. And the whole game changed. The more you can cultivate that sense of wealth, that sense of abundance in you, the more you can feel that sense of joy, the more easy it's going to be for you to do financially. Because you're not going to be in this scarce, fearful mode. Now, that's not enough by itself. You can have this great sense of abundance and do the wrong mechanics and be a disaster. True or false? But if I have an area to get you started with, you want to have the emotion and psychological strength, because that's going to carry you through when the mechanics are boring or frustrating, or when things aren't working out. Your emotion, your psychology is what will carry you. It'll get you to keep doing it. Everyone knows, if you've done any studies, Dr. Seligman is very famous for doing studies on optimism. And in those studies, you know what he found out? People that are pessimists are much more realistic. They're much more accurate. If you give them a test and you ask them to look at something and give you a size measurement of it, or to evaluate their own success or failure in a task, and every study Seligman's done, he did it in the University, I think Pennsylvania if I remember correctly originally, what he found was that optimists always see themselves as doing better than they really did. They basically BS themselves. What happens to pessimists, they're 10 times more accurate. But here's what he found out. What he found out is because the people who are accurate never push themselves because they know it's never going to work anyway. Whereas the optimist sees it better than it is, so they keep doing it. Because they have the illusion they did well, I'll do even better next time.
And because of that optimism, they did it more often. And so optimists succeed at a 4 to 5-fold, depending upon the task, result ultimately beyond anything that a pessimist will do. And they're not as accurate. All that's a big way of saying is, if you can develop a psychology of resilience in yourself, you don't have to be optimistic or fake, you can be real. The realness is, whatever shows up, you are larger than anything that can happen to you. You are larger than any financial challenge you could ever face. Initially, we'll say, well, look at their houses, look at their homes, and they don't really have electricity, they don't have this, but they don't feel poor. It's your identity. The way you define the wealth determines whether you're wealthy or not. So are there enough things for you, knowing that 2/3 of the planet lives on $2 a day, that you could get yourself to really feel grateful, yes or no? Yes. How much of your life do you get benefits from today that you never had to create? Think about it. Like I said, the roads you ride on, the library, the books you didn't have to write, right? The internet that you can access in seconds and get answers to just about anything. The people in your life that you didn't have to raise, but are there for you. Think about all the different aspects of your life. If you want to be wealthy, all you have to do is associate. So before we do the financial part, because financial independence is different than wealth. Wealth is that state of mind. Financial independence is being in that position where you don't ever have to work again. That if you work, you do it because you really want to. Now, I'll give you a clue. If you get financially independent and you don't work, you'll be miserable. I can't tell you how many friends I have that sold their company, made $50 million. One man made almost $1 billion and was really excited for a while. But after a while, it was like bored. His vehicle of his business gave him a sense of contribution, and he was always growing, figuring out how to solve problems, and he had all the people he was connected to in the business, all the employees and friends and associates. So I want to tell you, I'm not just saying this as some little positive thinking technique. I'm telling you, this is the secret, the real secret, to shift it inside of you and to add the real value. Most people are trying to pursue something in the future that they already have. I want you to think of what it is you think you want that will make you wealthy or financially free. By defining the game in a winnable way, a certain amount of money that we meet, and that covers what we're going to call financial security, which might be your housing, your cars, your food, and basic entertainment. How many would feel rich if you didn't have to work, if your investments alone, the income from your investments, the income, covered those 4 items, your housing for the rest of your life, your food, right, your travel, and some entertainment? How many think that would feel pretty good? Say aye. And by the way, that number is way smaller than what most of you think of when you think about being financially independent, which is everything covered without working. So why not get the first one down pat? And you're going to know exactly what that number is for you and what it's going to take for that number where you don't have to work to meet it. Then we can look at financial independence, where you don't have to work and everything is covered. Then we go to financial freedom. You don't have to work and everything you can think of is covered. Anything you ever want to do for yourself or others, those you want to give. That's a different level, isn't it? And most people think of financial freedom, they come up with this gigantic number that if you even figured out everything you want, it's nowhere near as big as you think. And because it's so big, you never even start the journey. And you don't think it's going to happen. So you talk about it, you hope you'll get some big hit sometime with your business or something, but you never get going. How many follow this? Say aye. If you are significant in other people's eyes, what will that do for you?
Well, as in my eyes, somebody that I would look, somebody that,
but when you get,
example.
But when you get there, you won't look to yourself anymore. When you get there, you'll just be at a different level, and then you'll be trying to figure some other level of what you need to get to so you would respect yourself.
That's a good point. He always makes good points. You notice that?
So what you're doing is, here's the game you're playing, and I want all of you to hear this. No amount of money will ever make you wealthy. Because as soon as you get there, you will raise the game. Now here's what's great about that. To continue growing in all areas of life. If you could grow emotionally, should you? Yes or no?
Yes.
If you could give more, should you? Yes or no?
Yes.
If you grow intellectually, should you?
Yes.
If you could give more love, should you? Yes. If you could grow more financially, should you? Yes, because growth is life. But having to grow in order to feel significant enough means you will always be poor. It's a game that never ends. Let's talk about money now, not wealth. What does it take mechanically to get this thing called financial independence? And what is financial independence as opposed to wealth? Wealth is a product of the mind. Again, no amount of money you ever achieve will make you wealthy. Financial independence means you never have to work again in order to live your life.
That when you do work, you're doing it because you really want to, not because you have to. And how many are committed to not only being wealthy, but also financially independent? Say, I. How do we get there? Let me give you the lesson how to get there. It is so simple that when I tell you, you're going to go, thank you for the breakthrough thought. But even though you may know this intellectually, whether you're sophisticated or not, you probably know this. The formula for financial independence is so simple. And you can't achieve financial abundance unless you really learn to apply this, not just in a concept in your head, but consistently in your life. And that formula is simple. Spend less than you what? You go, thank you for the breakthrough thought, Tony. But is this what most people do, yes or no? No. What do most people spend? More than they earn. There's no way around this. No matter how much money you have, if you spend more than you earn, you got a challenge. So there's no way to be financially free, financially independent without spending less than you earn. And what do you got to do with what you don't spend? You got to invest the difference. Because what I want to show you right now is how do you build what everybody should own. Every one of you should leave here with your own personal money machine. You want to create a money machine. A machine that while you're sleeping is making you money. Right? So you're no longer trading the most valuable resource you have in life, your time, for money. You want to trade money for money. You want money to go to work. You want to put that money to work for you so while you're sleeping it's making a difference. You want to create a machine. And that machine you want to create is something that you want to be able to feed you at some stage where you don't have to work. That's what the money machine is. The second secret to this is you got to reinvest. How many of you have ever made a big hit in your investments and went, oh my God, that's so cool, and took the money and spent it on something? Raise your hand, say I. Come on, say I. I know you all, anybody's invested has done this. If you got a big hit, you go, oh, this is it. Nothing wrong with that, but you got to make sure a significant amount of that, you reinvest your returns so you get compounded what? Compounded growth is the most basic principle in the world. We all know it intellectually. But are you emotionally associated enough that you're really utilizing it to its maximum capability? If you don't, you're not going to get financially free. You will never get financially independent by your earnings alone. Every one of you in this room is going to lose money. Every one of you. There's no way. The person I work with, one of the top financial traders in the history of the world, top 10 in the history of the world, is not even right half the time. How could you make billions of dollars if you're not even right half the time? Not even 51% of the time. I'm going to show you in a few moments. It's known as asset allocation. It's the way you invest. It's what you do. That's what's going to shift this. So first step, spend less than you earn, invest the difference. Second step, reinvest it so you get compounded growth until you reach the home run, your money machine, until you reach a critical mass of capital, of investment capital. When you get to that critical mass, and what determines the critical mass is how much you need for the lifestyle that you want. Once you get to that critical mass, what it provides for you is what you're investing for. Who knows, no matter what investment you're doing, what are you really investing for? Whether you're investing in cars, stocks, bonds, real estate, financial instruments, what are you investing for? You're not investing for returns. That illusion will keep you from getting to the end game. If you're wealthy, here's what makes you wealthy. Income, not assets. Assets you can buy, and assets change in value all the time. You need income. This is the only reason to invest. You invest for one reason, so you have an income for life without working. And to do that, you got to build a critical mass of capital, that the interest on it alone will give you that income, and you can have the life you want without working. And the only way to do that is do those first two steps. Spend less than you earn, invest it, reinvest it till you hit that critical mass. Now, how to do that is actually a lot simpler than you think. We make things more complex than it really is. You got to think of this as your target. In order to achieve what you want, where you have a money machine, here's what you must do. You must pick out a minimum financial goal for yourself. Even to achieve your minimum financial goal, you got to pick out a specific amount of money that you're going to invest every month, every year, no matter what. A specific percentage of your income. If you don't do that, forget the rest of this course. It's a waste of your time. Because you'll go make a bunch of money, but you won't be practicing the fundamentals, and eventually you'll make a mistake and you'll lose it. Let me tell you another secret to life. If you do the right thing at the wrong time, you get pain. If you plant in the winter, I don't care how hard you work. I don't care if you work day and night and you work to the bone and you plant your seeds in the middle of the winter. What's going to happen when fall comes? Are you going to be rewarded, yes or no? No. So if you don't understand that the seasons are changing, you're in trouble.
What is asset allocation? It means out of the money you have to invest, we're going to create 3 buckets. Really simple way of thinking of this from now on. The first bucket is the security bucket. When you think about investing, think of 2 types of investments. There are fixed income investments, and most of you are clear what this means. What does it mean when it's a fixed income investment? Who knows? What does that mean? You got a guaranteed rate of return, assuming they deliver. And anyone cannot deliver, including the U.S. government. They haven't not delivered, but they could. Is there risk in any investment? Yes or no? So just ratios of risk. And as we know, no risk, no reward. So if you don't invest, you're going to lose if you invest at times. But if you don't invest, you've already lost and you can never win, never have a money machine, never be financially free. The second type of investment that you can make and helps you understand what you're going to do is something that's going to be growth driven. And growth investments are investments where you probably have a much greater potential for growth, which means you get a greater return if you're successful. But if you're not successful, do you have a guaranteed rate of return? Yes or no? No. So in a growth investment, you have the potential of greater return, but also greater loss. The security bucket is where you want to put investments that are secure by their nature. Because they're secure, is this going to give you a huge compounded return per year? Yes or no? But can it give you a huge compounded return even if the number is small if you do it long enough? Yes or no? So what we want to do is your first investments have to be in your security bucket, and everybody wants to do the opposite. Okay. The question then becomes what percentage you put in your security bucket, what goes in there? Well, here's some things that go in there. If you don't have at least 2 to 6 months worth of cash that covers your overhead, you're in deep trouble. The first step to getting financially secure, not financially independent, is to make sure you got enough cash that if something happens, you can go for 6 months. You got the freedom. What else might you put in there? Types of investments. An IRA goes in here, right? Pretty secure. Insurance. The insurance is protecting you. That's part of security. What else could go in there? Your home. Don't think of your home as an investment. Because for most of you, you're eventually not going to sell that home and eat it. You're not going to sell your home and get income off it. Now, some of you maybe, you made a stage of life where you're accumulating the same homes, and eventually you're going to sell and buy a smaller home and take that critical mass that came from selling the big home, and it's going to take care of you for life. If you're doing that, great. But the place to think about your home in terms of leverage, put it in your security bucket. How many agree with me on this, by the way? Say aye. Because, by the way, if you don't have a home, you're going to be really stressed out. Right? So I got to think of my growth outside my home, really. Think of your compound interest outside your home. Your home may be a bonus for you. And fixed income investments all fit in this category. Now, what's the second bucket? Second bucket is growth. 2 ways you're going to learn about growth. The buy and hold strategy, which is the strategy of an owner. And by the way, that buying and holding, that is less risky to some extent than momentum because of the timing. But it can be just as risky. What is momentum trading? That's when you're no longer an owner, you're a trader. A financial trader, everybody's a financial trader. Most of you trading time for your money. Here you're trading money for money. Here what you're looking at is you're seeing movement in prices. And what a momentum player is doing is they're playing for the short term usually. Third bucket is the dream bucket. The dream bucket is you want to travel around the world. The dream bucket is you, depending upon the size of how you think or what you're doing or your economics, you want to own a condominium in Aspen. It might be the boat. It might be a trip. It might be owning a basketball team, owning an island. Depends on the size of what it is you want to do. And by the way, bigger isn't better. The more you have to feel financially free, the more stress you're going to have. How many follow this? It's the opposite of what you think. The more you have, the more you got to manage, the more time, the more energy, the more risk, the more capital. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Some of you are very, very driven to create and risk. That's a personality type. We know that it's crazy. I happen to be one of those types to some extent. But even a crazy person's got to make sure their security's there or their craziness at one point will bite them. How many follow? If you can get financially free for less, do it. Be wealthy now and get financially free quicker. And then lock in, you won. And then keep that stuff in your security bucket. And if you want to play a bigger game now, you've already won, and everything you're playing now, that's where the house is money. You can go for something bigger, and if it doesn't work out, you're still handled. Your security, what you're here for, is totally free. How many follow what I'm talking about here? Say aye. The more you can cultivate that sense of wealth, that sense of abundance in you, the more you can feel that sense of joy, the more easy it's going to be for you to do financially. Because you're not going to be in this scarce, fearful mode. Now, that's not enough by itself. You can have this great sense of abundance and do the wrong mechanics and be a disaster. True or false? But if I had to have an area to get you started with, You want to have the emotion and psychological strength, because that's going to carry you through when the mechanics are boring or frustrating, or when things aren't working out. Your emotion, your psychology is what will carry you. It'll get you to keep doing it. Everyone knows, if you've done any studies, Dr. Seligman is very famous for doing studies on optimism. And in those studies, you know what he found out? People that are pessimists are much more realistic. They're much more accurate. If you give them a test and you ask them to look at something and give you a size measurement of it, or to evaluate their own success or failure at a task, in every study Seligman's done, he did it in the University, I think Pennsylvania if I remember correctly originally, what he found was that optimists always see themselves as doing better than they really did. They basically BS themselves. What happens to pessimists, they're 10 times more accurate. But here's what he found out. What he found out is because the people who are accurate never push themselves because they know it's never going to work anyway. Whereas the optimist sees it better than it is, so they keep doing it. Because they have the illusion they did well, I'll do even better next time. And because of that optimism, they did it more often, and so optimists succeed at a 4 to 5-fold, depending upon the task, result ultimately beyond anything that a pessimist will do, and they're not as accurate. All that's a big way of saying is, if you can develop a psychology of resilience in yourself, you don't have to be optimistic or fake, you can be real. The realness is, whatever shows up, you are larger than anything that can happen to you. You are larger than any financial challenge you could ever face. Initially, we'll say, well, look at their houses, look at their homes, and they don't really have electricity, they don't have this, but they don't feel poor. It's your identity. The way you define the wealth determines whether you're wealthy or not. So are there enough things for you, knowing that 2/3 of the planet lives on $2 a day, that you could get yourself to really feel grateful, yes or no? Yes. How much of your life do you get benefits from today that you never had to create? Think about it. Like I said, the roads you ride on, the library, the books you didn't have to write, right? The internet that you can access in seconds and get answers to just about anything. The people in your life that you didn't have to raise, but are there for you. Think about all the different aspects of your life. If you want to be wealthy, all you have to do is associate. So before we do the financial part, because financial independence is different than wealth. Wealth is that state of mind. Financial independence is being in that position where you don't ever have to work again. That if you work, you do it because you really want to. Now, I'll give you a clue. If you get financially independent and you don't work, you'll be miserable. I can't tell you how many friends I have that sold their company, made $50 million. One man made almost $1 billion.